Holly, you're on mute, but would you be willing to run the meeting this afternoon since Pam isn't able to join us?
Yes.
Perfect. And if you need help with the agenda items, I can certainly, let you know what the topics are.
You know what? I'm almost to my destination, so definitely let me know. I can't see who's there right now, but I will be home in about 4 minutes.
Why don't we wait for you to get home? It'll probably make it easier for you and everyone. So we can wait a few minutes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. I have the agenda all printed out too. I just was running late at the post office.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Okay, yep, see you in a minute.
Lisa, if you could stop the recording and then we'll restart it when Holly rejoins the meeting.
Sounds good. I will pause this. I can mute the streaming as well, but I cannot stop it.
I'm glad you know what you're doing, Lisa. Before the meeting starts, maybe we can just make sure we can hear each other. Amy, do you want to say something? And we'll make sure that everyone can hear you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Roll call. Jennifer Tift.
Here.
Holly Tower. Here. All right, we're good. Karsten Anderson. Here. Okay. Yeah, let's start off with the first one, Karsten, if you want to go over it. The position descriptions and banding.
Sounds good. Received some questions about how we handle position description, ratings, pay equity, and those kinds of things. We didn't have anything specific in any of our handbooks, and so I thought it would be prudent to at least develop a rough draft of something. And I thought I would share with the Personnel Committee first, and then go through a few iterations, and then eventually take it to the board as part of one of our handbooks. And so please consider this a first draft, and I'm just looking, for feedback, and then I'll bring it back later. I think in the Administrative Procedures handbook. So you can see that Amy French, our Human Resources Manager, is starting to oversee the development and refinement of position descriptions, which lead to the position ratings, banding, and the pay equity report. You can see what's included in each one of our position descriptions for the district. And after a position description is developed or significantly changed, then Amy will send that to our compensation consultant, who specializes in this area of human resources. If there are changes in a position description, then the position itself might result in a rating change, which could result in pay changes, just to ensure fairness between positions, as well as our compliance with federal Equal Pay Act's requirement. That men and women receive equal pay for equal work. So it's actually a really important part. I treat pay equity very seriously, not only because it's a law, but it's because it's the right thing to do. And anyway, so I think this is an important step, for all of us to really understand, so we can make good changes. Also, sometimes the position descriptions could lead to posting for an available position. Sometimes it doesn't. But the school board, would approve any changes to contracts or the terms and conditions of employment for different employees. So that's kind of the school board's primary role. Also, the Human Resources Manager will once again be responsible for completing the equity report, which is required by the state of Minnesota. And so Amy will be learning how to do that report in the near future. So just a quick background as far as how these ratings work, because that's really the most important part of this paragraph. We contract with a company called Bjorklund Consulting, and we work with Bob Bjorklund, who owns and is the leader of the company. I've worked with 2 or 3 different companies during my career, and landed on Bjorklund Consulting because he has provided consistent, sustainable service for decades. When I've worked with other companies, too often there are people that we start working with, and then they find a different job, and then we have to learn to work with a new person. But with Bob Bjorklund, he's been around for years and plans to continue through retirement. So I'm confident that we'll be able to keep working with him. Each company uses its own different system for making the position ratings. I've worked with one system called the decision band method. Bob Bjorklund, though, uses his own system, the Bjorklund compensation system. And so there are differences in different methods, but we've been using Bjorklund for several years, actually. And I'm very pleased with the work that he provides. But do you have any initial questions or comments about how we work with our position descriptions?
Jennifer, do you have any? Because I have a few, but I just wanted to let you go first.
No, go ahead about that. I'm just glad this is being done.
Okay. So I know that there have been questions about banding and rebanding positions, and I'm trying to understand that if we reband a position and it goes up in salary, how is that not a posted position then?
Yeah, I think that's the key question. And I'll give you an example. We have Justin Klein has been our school age care coordinator for several years. And as we were reviewing position descriptions for a variety of positions, we analyzed his particular position and considered how many employees he supervises, those kinds of things. And so we asked Bob Bjorklund to review the position description, and he came up with a slightly higher rating. So at that time, we could decide, well, should we reopen the position or should we not? And in his case, we decided not to reopen the position. There are times when there's such a significant change in responsibilities or duties that it's prudent to repost for the position. And so it's been a judgment call in the past. And if I was going to change one part of this this section, I think it would be to better define when we post and when we don't post. So I think that if we do that, I think that would better answer your question, Holly.
Yeah, because I know it has to deal with contracts, right? Who's on a contract in a union and who's not on a contract in a union, and then who's an at-will employee, and then certain director levels, a director 1, a director 2. So I know all of those come into play. So to be very clear, we would have to then delineate what postings would look like for every section of that, correct?
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up the point as far as if it's a position that's covered by a contract with the Bureau of Mediation Services or a union contract, because that definitely comes into play, with something like this. So, obviously we always follow state and federal law, and then we also need to follow our employee contracts. And so our different contracts may have different regulations as far as transfer rights and when we post and when we don't post. And so we have to take that into careful consideration.
And in terms of giving somebody a raise, how is that written in for an at-will employee versus a contracted employee? Does it come with a rebanding or can they just get a raise?
Well, it usually comes from a rebanding, but not always. So for example, in our current system, we have some people, or we have different bands of positions, and some of those positions are rated as a 15 and some as a 16, for example. So right now they're in the same band, compensation band. But at some point we could differentiate between the positions that have a rating of 15 and those with a 16. And so that could, the rebanding could happen even if we don't rework our position description, because we already know the position ratings. So, but oftentimes, the rebandings will happen because we change the description, or maybe they're supervising more employees, or taking on significantly different responsibilities or duties. So
I know, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, no, go ahead, Ollie.
I was just going to say, I know it's extremely complex.
It's
right.
It's definitely complex, and I feel good about where we're headed in terms of a direction. I know 10 years ago we had some position descriptions that had been done by another company, and I don't know who we weren't happy with those position descriptions. And so we decided to kind of start over. And so we went through this position description questionnaire process where we worked with groups or different employees as far as redeveloping each one of those position descriptions. And then we shared those with Bob Bjorklund. And then he rated them initially. And then we use that information to make changes in our compensation levels. So, we've made really good progress, but we have more work to do. So, and one of them was the example of if we have jobs with position ratings of 15 and 16 in the same band, technically that can still fulfill the pay equity law. But at the same time, I think we need to carefully analyze and start splitting them apart, so that if somebody's in a higher band or has a higher position rating, typically they should earn, more money. So, yeah, we still have work to do with regard to that, but we made good progress over the last several years.
Okay, so is this a new job responsibility for Amy, or is this just embedded into what she's already been doing?
Yeah, it's I've taken a lead role for the last decade or so with position descriptions. Connie Bryant also worked with me, and then when Amy started just a couple of years ago, she's transitioning into that role now. So, Connie's worked with that in the past, and now it's going to be Amy. But some of those transitions from like me to Amy, when you replace a long-time employee like Connie, it takes time to do the full transition, and now we're getting to the point where we can do that.
Okay.
So to answer your question, it's always been expected that would be part of the plan, but now we're able to fulfill it more readily.
Okay. I can't think of anything else. I just know those were the couple questions I had. And I know that there has been some talk about the rebanding and posting of positions and different things like that. So I look forward to this getting to be more concise, so that if there are questions, we can go right to the document that says XYZ,
Yeah.
And stay completely in the black and white area.
Yep.
So,
In this case, I think clarity is really important.
mhm.
And we just need to decide together, what that looks like. So, like you said, Holly, we can, 5 years from now, if you have a new superintendent, the superintendent can pull out the document and know exactly what the process is. And same with board members, so that we can always follow that process.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, I can't think of anything else now, but I'm glad we're addressing it.
Yeah.
And Jennifer, do you have any questions that popped up from the conversation that we have? I know you're brand new to all this, so it'll take a minute.
I'm okay right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions or suggestions or concerns. Even after we approve the process at the board level, I think these transitions take a lot of time, and there are a lot of complicating factors. So we're always willing to keep refining them. So please keep the questions and concerns coming my way.
I guess this is my one question. Is it common to outsource the rebanding language, or is that usually done in-house?
It depends on the school district. Generally, I would say with, Amy is the human resources person. Obviously, Holly Towers is payroll, and Jackie oversees business management. But I think when we have one person on staff, my guess is that most of that would be contracted out. And I think that's actually pretty important to do, because we want to work with a company that does this for a living or has trained us how to do that. So I could see with time, someone like Amy could certainly learn the ropes as far as one of the compensation consulting practices. But that would take time, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure if it would be worth it right now, because we already have the position set up, and then we can just contract with Bob, just reband, them as they come along.
Okay, then I just have one follow-up to that. Is that part of our consulting fees that we pay yearly, or do we do it per position?
Yeah, we do it per position. Now we do. 6 or 8 years ago, whenever we did the full reset of our position descriptions, then we paid Bob or compensation consulting a some amount to do this kind of work. So it's kind of a one-time deal. But now that that's done, we contract with them on a per position basis, or per position description basis.
Okay.
We only pay every time we send one in for him.
Say that again, Jackie.
We only pay if we send him one.
Okay. So it's not like a monthly bill that he bills us and we
No.
can send in 4, we can send in 20. It's the same rate. Now it's just one. Okay. All right.
Well, I'll add one thing, that we should do more regular reviews of our position descriptions, because duties do change. The number of people that individuals supervise change. There's so many changes that happen that I think it'd be good to refresh, that information more regularly, instead of waiting for a decade or waiting for, just a big change that we have to make. But we haven't talked to the Bjorklund compensation about what that might look like. So,
Right. Because like off the top of my head, I can think of, the director of technology has fallen on to Mr. Pagel in addition to his full-time principal role. What is that looking like for banding? What does that look like for, payment? How is he getting compensated for that? Is that written into a separate contract? Has that, did we post that position? All of those kinds of things.
right.
That's one example that I'm thinking of right now, that's kind of out there.
Yeah, and actually that's a good example because that is one area that will likely change with time. So Mike Pagel is doing a great job now, but I think it would be better long-term to have a full-time person doing that, and that will likely mean that there could be a change in the position description, and then we go through the banding and see what rate should be paid to that person.
Yes,
Good example.
because I do want people to be compensated for the work that they're doing, and oftentimes in education, and I know it's probably the same in the corporate world, we pile on.
Right.
Because somebody's really good at something, we pile on. And then we pile on and go, now wait a minute, this could be a full-time job for somebody.
Yeah.
And so we have to be really clear about that. Okay, well, thank you for that. Does that go into the draft on page 5?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, if you have any, as you read through it, feel free to make suggestions or, with that draft version. Yeah,
Okay.
my way. But the next section has to do with succession planning. Do you mind if I jump into that?
Nope, go for it.
Sounds good. So I'm not sure if it came at a committee meeting or a board meeting, but there was a question about including information about a superintendent succession plan. And at first I misunderstood the request. I thought it was more of a, what happens if Carson is gone for 3 weeks or for 2 days? Kind of a backup plan that we've had for many years. We have that for all of our administrative positions. But Pam had gone to, I assume, an MSBA workshop where New Ulm provided some information about their superintendent succession plan. They review it and update it every year. So I called the New Ulm superintendent, or emailed him, and he gave us permission to share anything that we can from the PowerPoint presentation. So much of the information I'm sharing is actually from New Ulm. So the first part is that I give New Ulm acknowledgement of using their information, and I'll add something like, with permission from New Ulm Public Schools. So that's great. But this succession plan first calls for emergency short-term absences. What do we do if I'm gone for 20 days? How do we cover the superintendent duties? And this, based on what New Ulm does, would call for an acting superintendent. We could designate who that person is through the Administrative Procedurals Handbook, or selection during the public meeting, so we can decide how to do that at some point. Obviously, if any superintendent, if it's an acting superintendent or interim or regular superintendent, would need to be licensed by the state of Minnesota. This plan also talks about the superintendent and the acting superintendent would review, kind of what's happening in the school district, before he or she takes over. So that would be kind of an emergency or short-term situation. And then the next section has to do with if there's a permanent leadership change. So, and that can happen for a variety of reasons, as I described in number 1. The school district could hire an outside consultant, such as the MSBA, to conduct a search. Many schools do that. I have no idea what percentage of schools do that, but many do. I noticed that even Rochester, which is a large district, I think is going through MSBA to hire their interim superintendent that's available. And then you can see kind of the process for making decisions about permanent leadership change. So I won't read over those in verbatim because they're listed on the school board website for the meeting this evening. But it ultimately, of course, leads to negotiating a new superintendent's contract. One thing I'll point out is, what happens then? Clearly the most important goal is to have a really effective transition process. And I think most superintendents, I'm certainly one of them, is fully committed to always having a good transition. We're here for the kids and the staff and the community. And so you have that commitment for me. There's no doubt about that. There are some different transition possibilities. For example, I've thought about this in the past for, when you decide to have a different superintendent, there could always be a discussion about an overlap of work, for example. So let's say you decide, Carson, thanks for your years of service, but we want to go in a different direction. You could consider hiring someone for a year while I'm still here, maybe acting as an assistant superintendent, with the understanding that that person would become superintendent after a year, or 6 months, or whatever the time frame is. That's one option. Another option might be to exchange duty days before and after the contract year. So if the new superintendent starting on July 1st, there could be an understanding where I could work in a new district for 10 days before July 1st, but then I would essentially consult with the new superintendent for 10 days after July 1st. That's very common. I think I've done that with the 2 transitions that I've been involved with. Kind of trade days just to help each other out. And then, there's always, the possibility of a part-time consulting or part-time work, again, to help with the transition. So I just threw out examples. I'm sure there are more, but I wanted to get the juices flowing if and when you decide to do that. And then the next major category has to do with leadership development. And so ideally, we would have individuals within the system who could be mentored and encouraged to apply to be part of the administrative program. And then, also to become licensed as a principal, superintendent, or whatever the administrative position we're looking for. And then obviously, we want to give people interested in that kind of work special projects or leadership positions so they become familiar with what's going on. When I hire for principals and other administrative positions, I often look for what they might be invested in the future. Because that's got to be an important consideration, I think, as we move forward. And then the last part is kind of a review. And so my thinking is that this committee should review this article and make recommendations for consideration by the board. So I'm suggesting that we include this section in school board procedures book, because that handbook includes my evaluation, my contract negotiations, I think, and then we could also add this as a succession plan because it's the board's role to make that determination. So, and then also, the suggestion is that the personnel committee prepare for and help manage a change in leadership. So that's kind of a given as far as I'm concerned, but I put it in writing. So again, I'm throwing this out there as kind of a first draft, and I would like to include in the school board procedures handbook knowing that even when it gets approved, that we'll continually make changes in the process in that handbook, because we want to continually improve, and keep making the handbook better. But if you have any initial questions or comments?
Jennifer, did you have any?
I do not.
Okay. So it's twofold, Karsten. This conversation originated around who's in charge in the event you're out,
Correct.
right? And then it led into the succession planning and the legacy planning. Some places call it the legacy. Like, what's the legacy that the superintendent wants to leave so that the next one can build on? What are the things that have been accomplished? So, so I feel like we fall short if something were to happen to you short term that could move into a longer term, but not full time.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like if you're out for a week, what do we do? Who's going to scramble and say, well, I can do this, I can do that. I feel like we need a stronger plan in that area for Red Wing Public Schools. And so I know we've mentioned some names and different things have popped up, but I don't necessarily think. Am I on my
No, you're fine, Ollie.
Okay. Yeah, I don't necessarily think it has to be for the superintendent's license. Am I wrong?
Well, I think it probably depends, but clearly it's better if someone with a superintendent's license could be acting in that capacity. But in one of our handbooks, we do outline, what happens if I'm gone for, let's say, 8 days, and I can't be reached. I cannot fulfill my duties as a superintendent. And so, we call for, I think the suggestion in the handbook is to call MSBA, to follow their guidance, or the district attorney would be another possibility. But very few things, call for a superintendent's license.
Okay.
So Jackie would handle, business management stuff and running that part of this meeting. Amy would lead the human resources, with Jackie supervising. We have that all laid out in the manual. And so I think we're pretty much covered there. It would just come down to, like, if it's for a longer period of time and we're conducting meetings, we need the superintendent to make this recommendation or not. And then, the recommendation then is to hire an acting superintendent. It could be a retired person. It could be a neighboring superintendent. Maybe somebody on staff with the current superintendent's license. Somebody just to essentially fill the official void, in my absence. So one thing, depending on this discussion, is that I'm going to go back through that other manual and kind of update it to make sure it meshes with what we're talking about today. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It's still, because I know we've been kind of going around and around with it, and there are so many things that just pop up, like the superintendent needs to be involved in on a daily basis.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So, the finances and the HR pieces are critical because those are all day, every day. Mm-hmm. That people have to, so their responsibilities aren't going to be much different, whether or not you're sitting in the chair or not sitting in the chair. They still have to function, but right. It's the day-to-day, emergencies or questions about X, Y, and Z at this school that's where I get concerned. So, I think it's a good idea to look through the book, the policies, and, do we convene an emergency personnel meeting to determine next steps for who's going to be in succession, in the event of, and who isn't, who's part of that meeting, who's part of the decision making, kind of the step.
Sure. I don't know if I include that information in either manual, so I wrote that one down, and I can come up with kind of a draft that this committee could consider, for that. Vice chair, or the personnel committee, or would it board delegating? So I think that's what you're asking.
Yeah. Just because of COVID. The immediacy of needing people in certain places and they're not available.
Right.
Yeah. Which is what got my mind spinning on this. So, okay, that sounds good. And then bring it back to the personnel committee.
Yeah, it's either I mean, I can bring it back to the personnel committee and then eventually, to the policy committee and the board. I know it sounds like a long process, but I'd rather go a little slow on a lot of this stuff. Kind of go slow to go fast.
Yeah.
And so this is one of them. Same with the position descriptions. It's, like you said earlier, Holly, it's really complicated. And, as we implement something and we think, oh, we also have to factor this, that kind of stuff. So.
Jennifer.
Kirsten, will this succession plan be put together with the other one we were talking about that's already written? Will they be part of the same plan, just so we have it laid out step by step and all together in one spot?
Yeah, I think it would probably be better, and I think it would probably be better to have everything under the school board part, because that's where, the bulk of it would be. And so what I could do is have a reference. Let me write this down. Hold on just a second. So I could easily change the admin procedures handbook to refer to the school board to talk about covering for me. Yeah, I think that'd be the best option.
Yeah.
Yes, combine them, good.
Yeah.
I think of it in terms of like sub-plans. I have to have them on file in the event that, something happens on me to the way, so they can just pull them, give them to the sub, and everybody kind of moves forward
Right. Yeah,
in the event.
Yeah, exactly. The last thing I like to see, or the last thing I want to see is two different processes and different manuals, and then often they don't conflict. Or we update one, we haven't updated the other. It's confusing. So yeah, I'll try to put it all in the school board procedures manual in a separate article, but I'll run it by this committee first.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you have questions before then, just shoot me an email.
Sounds good. All right. Moving on to the community recreation coordinator position.
Yeah, this next three items will go pretty fast.
Okay.
And I know in March, Ellen presented information about plans for the community recreation coordinator position. After Josh Tegeson resigned and we combined two positions into one, came up with a position description and position rating, the banding. We did all that work. And Don Wettern did go through the interview process and hired Michaela. Don, how do you pronounce Michaela's last name?
Boyk.
Boyk.
Boyk with the K on the end.
Okay, I'm sorry, I always forget that.
That's okay.
Michaela Boyk, she has been our aquatics director, which includes the responsibilities of boys and girls swimming, head swimming. But she accepted this position. So much of her work will be the same as what she's done, because we combined the two positions together. But the reason I wanted to bring it up again, first, it's on the consent agenda tonight. And then second, we want to, we'll officially approve the new ban for this particular position. So that's included as an attachment. And then also I wanted to note that the new position description does not include responsibilities of the boys and girls head swimming coach. And so because of that, we will be posting those positions separately, probably tomorrow for next year. Michaela is eligible to apply, but no one is guaranteed those spots. We want to go through the full posting and then hire the best qualified candidate. So that's why the consent agenda is worded that way, just because the new position description doesn't include those two positions, and so we have to post them. So, does that kind of make sense? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dawn reminded me that she went over a lot of this in detail last month, but I had a doctor's appointment, so I had to leave the meeting. So,
Yes, and I was part of the joint powers, so she walked us through Jim and I through every step of, now this needs to happen and then this needs to happen. And so it was a great learning process for me to kind of see how intricate it has to be to reband or to, post positions. And if you change responsibilities, what that looks like. So yeah, I walked through that with her and it was good.
Well, and we are very fortunate because the city council did decide to open the water park So Michaela is going to be starting in perfect timing to hire a lot of people. So she's got to hit the ground running, pending school board approval tonight. Hint, hint.
Busy, busy.
Yes, she will be very busy. We're very fortunate. We had some fantastic applicants. We really did. The city was involved in interviewing, so I feel very good about the whole process, and we did get the best person.
Awesome.
Yeah,
That's
thanks,
great to hear.
As well as Paul Hartman for working on combining the position. I know you led the hiring effort. I feel really good about that. So,
Carson, I can't hear you very well. There's something going on with my computer. So what did you say?
yeah, I just thanked Holly as well as Paul Hartman for their work on this.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that's all I have there.
Okay. We are moving on to remote working.
And both Jackie and Amy are here. I'm not sure who's going to talk about it. I think Amy might be ready to talk. Jackie, is that okay? Or
That's fine, if she wants to take it, or I can start as well.
you can go ahead, Amy. And just a
Okay.
reminder, the speaker's over here. I always forget,
Okay,
but that's where
okay.
the speaker is.
Get my bearings. Okay, hi, everybody. Remote work. So the governor's order did have remote work. If you could work remote, then you should work remote. And that was through the middle of April. I don't recall the exact date. April
15th.
19th,
15,
15th, yeah, middle of April.
tax day.
So beyond that, the district has decided that Jackie and Kirsten and I met and decided that it's working well for the administrative team and the building heads to have the option to work remote. And so we're going to continue to allow that for at least the next couple months, and then we'll review it again.
Yeah, and what we talked about was not someone working full-time remote, but
Right.
A few days a week.
A modified schedule.
Yep.
It has been helpful for some of our employees to have that option, because the pandemic is still out there and people have childcare concerns and that kind of thing. So we're trying to accommodate people the best we can and give them the option for now. And as long as it's working on a modified basis, we'll just continue down that path.
How has that been communicated to staff?
Pretty much through the accommodation process. That's how Sherry and I have been working with people who have requested to work remote. Now, building heads, they would speak to Karsten and Karsten would approve it. If you're in district office, for instance, if I wanted to work remote, I would reach out to Jackie and have that discussion. So you're instructing people to reach out to their immediate supervisor. And if that doesn't get the result that they're looking for, then they go through the accommodation process. Hearing that.
Has the union been involved in that?
Only at the request of the employee.
Yeah, only at the request of the employee.
So that was part of when the employees had to fill out a Google Doc.
You mean for the accommodation when we knew we were coming back in person?
Yeah.
No, this stems way back to last summer when we were having people come back. The Google Doc that you're talking about was one that Sherry and I sent out to get a touch point with the people that we knew had accommodations. And once we knew we were coming back in person, we wanted to gauge if they thought they were coming back or not. Is that the one you're referring to, the most recent one?
Yeah, and then I had inquired about it in December and asked about how people kind of go about without knowing personal, what personal requests are from people, an ADA or, all of those things. No, but what is the process for people that go about? And what I'm hearing you say is that people go to their immediate supervisor.
Correct.
Right. And I don't know if that's been clear. That's why I was saying, how do people, how does that get communicated on a larger scale?
That has gone out in Karsten's communications
Okay.
the past year. That's been our general sort of statement. If you, for lack of a better word, if you have a need for an accommodation, whether it's to work remote for childcare or your quarantine, whatever the case is, work it out with your supervisor, building principal, whoever that may be. If that doesn't work, if that can't come to a resolution with that, then you go through the accommodation process and you send an email to me, normally to me or to Sherry, and then I reach out to schedule an accommodation meeting.
Okay.
Go from there.
Yes, because I do know that Carson would send that out in his email to staff. And so that's the one touch point that everybody should be focusing on then.
Yeah.
Got it. And that will continue, like you said, because you're going to continue this?
Yeah, we're continuing the accommodation process. We have them often. We have the accommodation meetings often with staff.
Okay, good. And how long do you foresee doing it?
At least through the end of the school year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. COVID leave expiring March 31st, says Jackie. Amy.
I believe that's me. So as you know, we've talked a lot about the Families First Coronavirus Act. That was mandatory, 12/31/20. It was made voluntary for businesses to elect to continue that through March 31st, which we did. So we allowed people to, I'm just giving you some backstory in case you don't remember all these conversations that we've had about it, but we allowed people to continue to use their unused emergency paid sick leave days, COVID leave days, which has been hugely beneficial for people as we've been vaccinating our staff. That expired on March 31st, and then it rolled in the American Rescue Plan. That gave employers the opportunity, it's voluntary, to get 10 more days of COVID relief days through September 30th. So 10 more emergency paid sick days. They restart their bank, if you will. We opted, Jackie and I and Carson we talked about it. We had a lengthy conversation and we decided to not offer that. For the simple reason that most of our staff is either vaccinated or been offered the vaccine. And we're not seeing the need that we saw before for that. And so for right now, we've opted to not participate in the American Rescue Plan COVID relief days.
Oh, it's called the American Rescue Plan,
American Rescue Plan, yep.
COVID relief.
Yep, it was signed into law on March 11th.
Okay, Jennifer.
I was just wondering if there's a cost for opting in or only if it's.
There is a cost to opt in. It would be paid leave, and our only tax credit then would be the Social Security and Medicare taxes related to that leave. So we would still have to pay the person's daily wage and their PERA or TRA contributions. We'd have to pay for the substitutes, but we would not have to pay the FICA and or the Medicare and Social Security tax on it.
Is just because this is all new, Jennifer, were you done with your question?
Yeah.
Okay. Is this optional for staff if something happens and they say, wait a minute, can I apply for the American Rescue Plan? Or is that something the district has to make known to the state ahead of time that we will be participating in this?
The district would have to opt in. It would look probably very much like a board resolution like we did to opt in to the January 1st to March 31st. We did a board resolution to do that.
Okay. So your recommendation is not to do this American Rescue Plan?
Correct.
Carson?
Yes,
Is that something that you want the board to be part of, or are you confident with that decision?
yeah, I was part of those discussions, and I think it's the right one because of the level of vaccinations of our staff. The problem that we could run into if we continued it would be the problems finding substitutes.
Hey, Kevin.
And so that's
Hi, Brent. How are you today?
really not a cost
Good,
issue.
you?
It's finding substitutes.
No
But
complaints.
We're confident that we'll have
Not when it's 80 degrees in
enough of our staff
April.
members vaccinated, and
That's
so that
something.
should limit
Crazy.
to this.
The last
So
2
yeah,
days,
I'm confident
I
with
can't
what
even.
we discussed. And if that's the
Wasn't it,
case, we'll reflect that. in the
Yeah, wasn't it
personal
last
meeting
year? There was
notes,
this,
but
we
there
still
won't be
had
a
snow or some kind of
recommendation for
snowstorm. I
this
remember having to be
previous
in
one
for
was set to
Easter.
expire much later.
I can remember having a snowstorm.
Um,
I want to say it was almost May one year.
If we decline
I
it
think
now, is
yeah, it was
there
middle
a
of May
time
because we had like
where
that 18
if,
inches,
if
right?
things
Real
go a
wet.
little bit wild and we say, wait a
I
minute,
brought
we might
my,
need to revisit
you know,
this
old
and
four-wheel
jump back
drive
in?
Ford, and I remember bringing it in
Yes, we
and
could
driving
revisit
through
it
the
at any
yards,
time.
pulling trees off the
Um,
streets.
To my knowledge, we just open until September
I told
30th.
I told Carson, this is very often I get to go four-wheeling in the
So
schools.
I'm
front
thinking
yard
of
now, I'm
like
getting trouble
all
for it.
kids are back in school now, different strains of the of the, just the
And this year I had
unknowns,
to
even
help
with vaccinations.
Sunnyside, get your air conditioner going this
How
morning.
fair would it be to a staff
Oh no,
person if
kidding!
they
I
have
was
to take
wondering
their own
about that.
5
I was like,
days
man, I haven't gotten
of
any
sick
calls
time,
from
and
the
then all of a
kitchen
sudden
being like,
something
"It's
happens and
hot,"
we go
and
to
I was
this,
like,
and
I
then
bet it
staff are
was,
able
you
to
know?
opt into another 10
But-
days because it is offered
Ugh.
through the state.
Anything it's
So
running.
it seems
No
I
complaints is
completely
good.
understand what you're saying. Like most people should have their vaccinations. We should be ready to roll
That's
with
funny.
this. But on the caution side, I understand why it would make sense from a cautionary perspective
Oh, my warranty.
to make sure that we're covered all the way through until it's not offered anymore.
How's Mr. Palmetier?
Hey, Chris, how are you?
Yeah, I think I can speak
Brad?
on behalf of Amy
Yourself?
and Jack. We agree with that.
Yeah.
We
All
could,
right.
as far as I know, we can opt in at a later time. And I think that's
Are we
critical for
going
the
to be
reasons you
beamed
said.
into the library? Is that how this goes or what?
Okay.
Something we just have to assess as we go
Beamed
along.
into the library.
You know,
Well,
things-
isn't it is this a hybrid meeting where there's some people in person and some are, we're beaming in, Kevin.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Okay.
And I think they're
That's
going
how
to
I
try
took
that.
it.
I believe they're going to try it with the
By the way,
board
it's
meeting tonight too, where some
4:45.
board
By the way,
members
We adjourn.
will be there and some will not.
I think that was our last topic, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, it says operations
Yeah.
hybrid. I didn't
No,
even notice that.
it's perfect timing.
Great.
Does
I'm so
anybody else
spoiled
have
being able
anything?
to do it from home.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
I have like these meetings.
Okay. Thanks,
This way.
everybody.
Honest.
Bye.
I was thinking of going home. Actually, I was thinking of going to the high school too, but I thought, nah, I got too much to do. I agree. There's time spent that just kind of cuts down on that. Would actually, I like it too.
We get a lot more done sometimes. Hi, Arlen.
Hello.
Hey, Mr. Brandt.
agenda. Does anybody have anything else for the agenda before we go forward? Hearing none, we'll go into business items, food service equipment. Good afternoon, Mr. Luxville.
Good afternoon. Okay, so thanks for having me back this month. When you take a look at the capital, the first couple of years, you can kind of see how we were structuring it. Just kind of due to COVID, we went back and we kind of re-looked at some of those items that we want to move forward in the food service. So when you take a look at the 2021, the last meeting we talked about the convection ovens and just the fact that the market right now for convection ovens is flooded. So about a year and a half ago, we were spending about $14,000 per double deck gas convection oven. Right now they're going for about $6,000 a piece. And so now is the time for our kitchens to kind of make that move and to purchase that equipment. And so what I did is I did move forward with purchasing of the ovens. Later this week, I'll be moving forward with kind of the Impinger as well purchase as well. And then some of the warmers as well. A lot of the items on there I can still fit within this year's budget that the board has approved. And then for next year, what the board needs to know is when you approve food services budget for next year, you're going to see about $130,000 higher than you would normally see in a year. And that's just due to the dishwasher purchases. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to roll that into our budget for next year. So when you approve that, you'll be approving the purchases of those dish machines as well. So, and then kind of following the years after 2022 and 23, we just have a few purchases there. Trying to slow down a little bit to try and gauge where we're going to be at and what we may need to kind of pivot based on the needs at that point. So, Kevin?
I was just going to check the list that I have here. Is this what I have on our master plan too, or have you tweaked it a little bit?
It was, but I did tweak it. A lot of the items in looking at our original 10-year plan, I moved priorities. So they're in your 10-year, they're just not going to be, they might not have been now in the same year.
So I should take the list you have here to update my current one. Would that be accurate then?
Yep. And then we can, are you in later this week by chance or?
Tomorrow, yeah.
Tomorrow? Okay. Perhaps we can kind of connect on things on there too, just so that we got an updated one too.
Let's make sure it's accurate. Thank you.
Yep.
Do you have any questions on the next couple years plan and the last 8 years of the 10-year plan? Okay, we're done. Thank you, Mr. Leopold. Volunteer and Mr. Gaylor, Twin Bluff Playground.
All right, I'll go first. I'm going to kind of give you an update on the city part of it, and then Chris is going to kind of hit on the fundraising part of it in that area. So, as you know, we went to Red Wing City Council, or I went to the Red Wing Public Works and asked for them to, if they would consider helping us out as they did at Twin Bluff, or Sunnyside, I'm sorry, with the installation of the playground. I laid out in detail what their responsibility would be, or what we were kind of looking at for them, and then what our responsibility would be as a school district. When we laid this out, their responsibility would be more of the concrete, dirt work, engineering, a little bit of engineering, and the storm sewer drainage part. When they went to council, like I said, on the 22nd, I did listen to their meeting, and they did end up approving to help us with labor costs of around $50,000 and about $25,000 they would allocate towards the storm water, more of the concrete, getting the base set for it, and the engineering costs. Now, with that being said, we as an admin group have been talking, are we able to get the funds for the playground with the fundraising since it came about so quickly. So as we talked through that, we were saying maybe we should wait a year out to be able to maybe raise more fundraising or have that capability of raising more funds. So when I went to the city, I told some of the guys, the managers there, that we haven't made a decision yet, but it might be where we hold off on waiting till next year. But we would still obviously do that, the natural playground. So just kind of wanted to update you guys, and I think with me and Chris giving you the update, getting some guidance from you guys on kind of what we want to do there. I know there's going to be a lot of talk within members of the community saying, I heard you guys are putting up a playground, the city council approved it, and us not being able to maybe do it this year on our part. So I think the sooner we can get that out to the public, so they're not, expectations aren't kind of foiled, I guess. So that's all I have. Does anybody have any questions about the city part of it?
I'll just add thank you to Mr. Moskwa and his group of Public Works staff there to help be a good partner. They've done it before, and really appreciate them stepping up again and being a partner with us on a project that can benefit the city and the school.
And that was mentioned by Mr. Moskwa. Whenever it comes to working with the school district, they always try to work with us and do what we can. So yeah, it's appreciative that they were so willing to help us in such short notice, I should say. That because when we started this whole playground thing, it really became, can we do it without them? Probably not. And if they can't help us manpower wise, just because of other projects and the short notice, would that impact us being able to do it? So they kind of pulled through there. So
thank you. Over there.
Thanks, Alan. A couple of things here. When I know the playground has been, I don't want to say it's a big issue, but I have heard from people in the community about having that kind of things for the students here too. And it's a reasonable request and a reasonable concern on their part too. So I keep thinking in two terms. I think of what can I do in the short term, hence the natural playground that is. I was talking to Aaron the other day. They thought that they might be able to get this done in May to have it up and going. The other thing that we're doing, I don't know if this means anything to any of you, but we've purchased a Gaga pit. It's just something kids love to do. It's a game within a pit. So we purchased that. We're going to see where that goes. And I was able to purchase that with my own dollars that's allotted to the school. So there's the short term. So I can assure you and the board members, we're working on it. The other thing, though, is like Alan had referenced, I had no more than, maybe 2 or 3 people contact me regarding the fact that sounds like the city's full speed ahead with this project. And I said, now, wait a minute, we have our own timeline that we have to follow. So I think like Alan said, that needs to be consideration when we're talking right now. And as far as, how we're doing with fundraising, we're actually doing pretty well. I think we will be able to get anywhere between $20,000 to $25,000 just in this round. I mean, when you do a fundraiser and you say it's specifically for something, it speaks to people. So we've done well with that. And Burnside did donate their fundraising dollars to us. And we have yet to talk to community funders yet. I haven't had an opportunity to meet with my group to reach out to those people. So that's where we are right now with funding and where we are currently.
Questions?
Yeah, Arlen here. If we were able to come up with the funding within, say, a month, would the city be able to put this in this year? And would we be able to get the material?
So Arlen, yes, it is there. The timing that we asked for was to put it in this summer. So they think we could have that in by the start of the next school year. If we could come up with funding, they would do what they can to get it ready by the start of school.
I'm just wondering if we put out an appeal to the public to have that, if we can raise the funds by, say, end of May or the first week of June or something like that, we will go ahead and try to put that in this year. And if not, it's going to be a year till we can do this. I just wonder if that impetus and the popularity that I think this project would be, I think we could raise that money. There's a good chance we could raise that money.
Say, Alan,
This year. I don't want to see it wait another year if we don't have to, but I also know reality has to set in and we may have to go that route. But I think just an appeal to the public for raising and the urgency to get a response in a short amount of time may spur that project to go all the way this year.
I like that idea.
Say, Alan, did Jay ever give us a drop dead date on ordering to get it by the time, get it in time?
No, but I do think they are able to get it, but he didn't give me a specific date.
I think we should check with him on that, because you start talking possibly not ordering till June. That's getting pretty tight.
I guess another thing that we may need to try to come up with some numbers, I guess, when we're talking fundraising, or how much, if we go to the public and like Arlen suggested, what are the money number we're looking for to get?
All I can do, Alan, is I just have the numbers that they did for Sunnyside, and that's when Jane Boating provided me with those numbers. She thought that they set a fundraising goal of 70,000.
And we got
25 so far. And that's in-school fundraising. That's, and I don't know, Alan, I don't know how this works. I've never done a fundraising project like this myself. However, I know that we've just done, this is just internally with our Apex fundraisers, those dollar amount. We have, like I said, we have yet to contact the people that typically do this kind of funding in the community. Because we've kind of been waiting. Are we going to do it this year, next year? The fact that Arlen brought up, maybe we do like a drop dead date. Maybe there is something to that, but we've just gone as far as our student fundraising part.
Say, Chris, what is the school district's part donation amount of? Because I know the board approved an amount for us when we did Sunny. I don't know if we've ever approved an amount that's going to come from the district. The 70, it doesn't come close to covering it.
Right. It was what I have here is the revenue was $90,000 from Red Wing Public Schools. And that's, again, Jackie might be able to speak more to that, but that's what I'm holding in front of me. That was the proposal, and those were numbers adopted from Sunnyside.
Yes, that is what we've done for Sunnyside, and it went through the operations committee and was board approved to do that. We have not done anything for a school contribution to this project yet.
I'll just weigh in here. I think it's a great idea to put the playground there. I drove by there the other day, and there's a lot of younger people at the school, and then Mr. Plummer here also playing on the tennis courts, kids out running the fields. There is a need. If we're going to actually do some serious fundraising, put a push out there for the next 60 days, we need to have a clear target what we are asking for. And that 70 or 90,000 that Sunnyside was 2 years ago, and that was a handicap accessible type of project that we did there.
Yep.
I hate to get people going. We see 70, we get to 70, and we need 125 or something. I'm just throwing numbers out here.
Yep.
I don't have any real problem waiting, but I also, if the need and the desire by the people in the district shows in the next 60 days, I'm for it. Let's get her in the ground. But let's be realistic on the number we want to do. We can't say we want this number, get it, and then say, oh, we were wrong, we need more. That doesn't go over well. So.
And I'll add to that, we don't want to raise the money and then find out that, well, the equipment isn't going to be available, and so we have to wait a year,
Exactly.
for maybe products. Yeah.
So, Board Member Derek, Board Member Tipp, if you're okay, I say we give them the direction to try to get some hard, fast numbers and go out and they can get those numbers and make the product is available. That we give them a target of June 15th to go get the money. And you hear me, Mr. Gaylor? Okay, June 15th. And if it's 125 or if it's 100, I don't know what the number is, but you get that and you want to do it. I think this committee is in agreement to get her done, so to speak, as Larry says. So, am I agreeing? Board Member Derek, Board Member Tipp, you agreeable to that?
I agree, as long as we get the numbers and the timeline to make sure we can.
I don't think I hear you. Can you hear us okay here? We're talking across the room a little bit.
It is a little difficult. It is a little muddled.
I just said that I agree. Can you hear me now? Okay. I just said that I agree, as long as we can get some specific numbers and make sure we can get the materials, and then do a push for a specific deadline, I think that would be great. Understanding that it may not work.
Board Member Derek?
I think we need a number of what the dollars are going to cost to do this. I think we need the board to come up with a number they're willing to commit to this project. And then we need a timeline of how long we got and still be able to get the equipment this year or whatever to put it in, and so we can set that drop dead date. But sometimes fundraising can go a lot better if you say that you have to have the funds in a certain amount of time, not a year out from now. But on the other end, when you put it out too quick, some organizations can't react that quick. So I just think we need, what is the board willing to spend on this project? What is the total cost of the project? And you can decide how to work the city's contributions into that. I'm not quite sure. And so then we're going to have a goal of what we need to raise for fundraising to make the project go. And then we need to know by what date we have to have those funds committed to make the project fly. And I personally think it'd be very hard to make it go by the start of school, but I still think we could have it in maybe in fall yet or something like that, which would be good. I just really would hate to see us wait out another year. Just for information, I mentioned to Carson that I thought maybe some COVID dollars could be dedicated to this because of the need, because of the way we changed grade configurations because of COVID. Apparently in the board packet it says we were talking about this before, so maybe it's not, but at that time we didn't have kindergarten, first, second, third grade in the school building. So I personally think that it maybe could use COVID dollars, but I'm sure we're going to find plenty of places to spend COVID dollars regardless. So, but I think this project needs to fly. You've heard people say that I've been a backer of doing this for many, many years, and it just doesn't accomplish much to keep talking about it or sitting on the table. Let's get her going.
That's what I said. Remember, Tipp?
Chris, I was just wondering if you could respond to one question I've gotten from community members. I have my response, but I'd like to hear yours. Moving forward in the next few years, if we go back to having a middle school at Twin Bluff, do you see this playground getting used often during the school day? Or how would you say it's going to be used? Is it once we have Twin Bluff back as a middle school? I have been telling families absolutely, with the Twin Bluff would really appreciate having the playground there, but I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit more.
Jennifer, I think you directed that toward me, right?
Good, thank you.
Okay. Well, I guess my response is twofold to that too. I don't know. I certainly can't predict what the configuration will be at Twin Bluff. That's the $1 million question. I get asked that on a regular basis. That said, I do know that fifth and sixth grade students, if we buy the right equipment, the older students would respond to that. I mean, I think you can, and I've even had conversations with teachers within the building who really want to see something like this fly because, they recognize that, when you have a healthy recess, that reflects what's going on in the classroom too. I mean, there's less issues out there too. So is it something that we kind of, we're very deliberate about what we purchased? Does it have to be something that's, can it be more, what's the word I'm looking for? Perhaps more, can we have certain things for younger kids, older kids? It's gonna have to be a bigger plan overall. So to answer your question, I believe it would get used. I mean, even if it's built more for primary grades, listen, I spent the day watching my fifth grade kids have a ball play line tag for 20 minutes. They had a gas. And as I said, we're starting to figure out the younger kids bit by bit. But I believe it will be used. And the second part to that is, I think as a community option too. I mean, we have apartments that are right across the street too. I believe that if we put it in the right place, that's why I keep thinking out in front, that it would be used in that regard too.
Thank you.
I agree. Anything more on that? You want to get something back to the next board meeting then with some dollars? Because maybe we're getting a part ahead. Everything Arlen said, we already agreed to, except for getting the board stuff, which we missed. So I think if we bring something to the board next meeting, that way we can push for the fundraising publicly and get out there a big push after that. And maybe it's even July 1st. I don't know what the date is, but what are our costs going to be? What's the commitment from the school? And then go forward to see if we can get this project done this year with a target in mind. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
Quick question, Jim. So there's nothing you want from us for the next meeting? You guys will put it on the agenda for the school board. You'll talk to them and try to figure out what the funding will be from the school, and then we'll go from there.
No, I need you to come up with a number you need for the whole project. What's the fundraising goal? What are you looking at fundraising? What's the school going to contribute? You've already said 50,000 or that ballpark, if I remember, from the 6th Red Wing. Put a budget together, what you need. Bring it to the board to see what we can do. That way people know how much they need to commit and how much we need to get people involved with for contributing to this useful project.
Okay.
Alan, I think we need to find out product availability. Can that be done? Yeah. I mean, I think you and I need to rough out a timeline. And then I think we should go back over this proposal that was given to me from Sunnyside, because obviously it's applicable to at some regard. And then I need to get together with a team of people to figure out how much do they feel. I mean, there's some people in town that have a better hand on the pulse of what they feel like we could raise. Those are people that you and I, we're just going to have to put together a timeline, Alan. So I'll give you a phone call tomorrow, and we'll just kind of rough out something to present to the board.
Very good.
Maybe we could meet when I'm there tomorrow too, a little bit, since I've been through it and there was stuff that popped up that wasn't expected. So just kind of help you guys out.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Superintendent Houston will need it, or Lisa will need it by the Wednesday the 14th. Whatever.
Okay.
Clock's ticking, dude. So. Thank you.
Yep.
Next item, probably butcher her last name, Sarah Hooley, and Mr. Terry Johnson. Am I correct on that, Sarah?
Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted. It's Hool, but
okay.
It's pronounced that way a lot, so I'm used to it. Don't worry.
Thank you for clarifying that. I should have done that ahead of time. Apologize.
And if you don't mind, Jim, I'll jump in and just give a brief intro.
Go ahead, Superintendent Anderson.
We made significant changes in our transportation system because of COVID this year. We enlarged our walking zones to 2 miles because we had a specific criteria that we had to meet with the state. As time has gone on, we did a really good job with that, and now we're back to more in-person instructions. We have more kids on the bus. But the question has come up repeatedly as far as why aren't we lowering the no bus zones? Because we do have, fairly empty buses as what we had planned. And so I know that Terry, Sarah, and I have talked about it. We've received some parent requests. And so we thought it was a good time to at least share with the operations committee and the public as far as why we haven't lowered those no bus zones at this time, or at least we're doing it very carefully. And so Terry or Sarah, could you kind of just give a brief rundown as far as where we are with that and why we haven't started that? And I think there's some legitimate reasons, but I thought you could at least explain that to all of us here.
I can do it, Sarah, if you want.
Sounds good. Go ahead.
Okay, appreciate you guys taking this time to have us come in and explain this. I know it's kind of a topic that a lot of parents are interested in, and there is a lot behind the scenes that people just really don't know about and how we have to approach this whole situation. In a normal year, our bus capacities are what we call, we have excess onto the bus because we know there will be under ridership. This year, it challenged us to where we have to follow stricter guidelines, and it isn't based off the amount of kids that are technically on the bus physically. It's the amount of kids who are rostered onto the bus. And after we've done numerous load counts, CISO made phone calls to the ones that we identified as not riding. We had some that, didn't, took their kid off the roster, but the majority of them kept their students still onto the roster so that they'd have that availability for them. So that is one of the main differences and why it's confusing to people and they wonder why, because we have to go off of the roster students onto the bus. We have to follow CDC and MDE guidelines. The first 2 rows of the bus are off limits to the students to maintain the 6 feet to the driver. That is still involved in what we do. One of the other things is this was designed to move between all the scenarios flawlessly. I can tell you anything that happened, we should be able to move from one thing to the next. If we start bringing some, more in and we raise the capacities, our concerns would be, how do we tell those people that their kids can't come? It's just, it possibly be a logistical nightmare. Jefferson and Sunnyside only have 1 gen ed bus assigned to each of those schools. And even a 1/10 of a mile, because of the population density, could, dramatically influence how that goes. If it was a matter of the high schools, we could, expand, we could drop that down and there wouldn't be any issues, but within the elementary schools is where we see issues starting to happen based off of the population densities. Another thing is, if an exposure were to happen, the lower capacities do minimize the amount of students who would be out. One of the things I did find out from the COVID team, that is, if a student who happened to be positive at some point didn't have their mask on the bus, the entire bus would have to be quarantined, even if it was a mild exposure. The reduced capacities also play into time with all of this. Anything under a half hour we can pretty much deal with, where we wouldn't have to quarantine or do those things. Anything that goes over that half hour is where we start having problems, and then we'd have to start quarantining kids off the bus. And then maintaining the proper protocols would be more difficult with an increased amount of kids onto the bus. It is a much smaller area than a classroom. the driver's not able to give their full attention like a teacher would in a classroom. So the possibility of a kid, removing their mask for a bit or anything also poses an issue that if something came up, it would affect an entire bus. One of the big things right now is the weather is getting better. I was more concerned with all this over the colder months and how it was going to be affected. One of the interesting things on our end of it is most of our phone calls seem to be coming from parents who in previous years, you could if they fell under the bus zone limit, if we had room, we could put them on. These are the people who are kind of coming back to us now, and they are well within the limits of 1.35 miles, 1.4, 1.6. And I just don't see a scenario where we could reduce down to those levels. So that would pose more issues than what we would have. But those, on our end of it, those are the ones that are coming to us, and they might be contacting other people. Other people might be, but I've had numerous conversations with Shonda with the COVID team. We all agree that the routes in their current form are the safest, best way to get the students to and from school. All of the distance learners they're just starting to basically come in now. So I still don't even know what an actual count's going to look like. You got to, because with the distance learners come in, there's probably a lot of parents who are going to drive them in for a little bit just to get them reacclimated, and a route count probably really middle of April sometime is when that would, we could do that. And then having to move from that point, we're already looking at May to get that. Don't get me wrong, I'd love to take as many students as we could. I don't like doing this. I see the same thing that everybody's out there with because I'm out watching it. It's just all the districts are dealing with the same issues. This is nothing that is unique to Red Wing. Our other locations up in the Twin Cities that we've got, let me put it this way, you guys have been in school much longer than they have, and we haven't had the problems that they've encountered. And they are following the same protocols that we are. So it's nothing new. So everything that we're doing is awesome. And, the support of the school board and, the COVID team and everybody else has made our lives really difficult. I mean, not difficult, made it better. Because, if you think about it, if an exposure happens on a bus, you could probably touch every class in a school at that point. So, and that's pretty much it. If Sarah wants to put something in too, to add to that.
You covered a lot of that. I can speak more to, watching the inner city schools run more students on their buses. We are quarantining buses often. It's a mess. You are then affecting not just one classroom, not just one area. You affect a lot of things. As it's getting warmer, kids are a little more rambunctious. Like you said, the driver is driving the bus, so no one can sit and yell at little Timmy to stay in his seat and keep his mask on properly. So when we get a positive case, we watch a video and watch how he moved to this seat, to that seat, and he was supposed to be in this seat, and then maybe he kind of wore his mask right. And so now we've affected half the bus instead of just, the surrounding ones. So when you add more students to that, it gets harder.
And
And
if I could just add so everybody understands, we do have assigned seats.
oh yeah,
We do track where they're at, but, you know, we're dealing with some really difficult times. And, you know, it happens.
we're required to have seating charts. That's in the governor's order. So, and that's supposed to be attendance tracked every day. So that's part of it too.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? I guess I do. I have one. How's it looking for September start date for vaccinations for the bus transportation system?
Sarah, you might be able, since you got a broader aspect, is that something you, because right now, my drivers are about at 50%. I can speak for that point.
Vaccinated?
Yeah, vaccinated completely.
Yeah, I would say by September, most drivers will be offered the vaccination. Doesn't mean all of them are going to do that process, but we definitely would. I think anyone would be offered it. We have most of them in the cities now have been offered it too, so we're rolling along pretty well.
I wasn't talking just the drivers, I'm talking about the students also. And that's 5 months from now, 150 days when we start of school. Lots gonna happen when we're getting X number of people vaccinated every day, the numbers are going spiking and going down, it depends what newscast you watch. So whether you started planning for the fall school year.
Kirsten, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, Jim, if I could.
Absolutely, Superintendent
Yeah.
Anderson.
I did meet with Sarah, I believe, last week. She does all the routing for the district, and so we talked about how we could set up the transportation system for next year. She'll be running some scenarios and, you know, letting us know how many buses we're expecting. One thing that we're aware of is I think we're going to have continued need for bus drivers. And so right now we're leaning towards the current two-tier system. So one bus could serve elementary and high school. You know, they might take the high school kids first and then serve the elementary, you know, that kind of thing. So we can reduce our need for drivers. But Sarah's going to run those numbers and see where we land. At the same time, we want flexibility in case, like Jim said, we don't have enough kids vaccinated. There might be another variation or problems with rolling back completely into school. So we want flexibility. But our goal and our assumption is that we will be fully in person starting in the fall. So that's what we're operating on, but we just want that flexibility.
That's really didn't answer it, but I'll add maybe more clear. Have you started looking at plans, how many kids you can put in the bus?
Right now, for next year?
Like Superintendent Anderson said, we're looking at full in person today. Schools.
So we're looking at riding our buses full in person for planning purposes. We'll keep revamping that as we get more guidance, but from all my, you know, the routers that are planning next year right now, we're all planning full in person, going back to more of a normal look on what busing looks like and bringing students to school.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if I can say, they got it set up for full in person. We already have a template in case something did go south and headed in a different direction. So we should be able to do that pretty seamlessly. Am I correct in that, Sarah?
Yep. This was our test year and we got that figured out. So now we'll go back to what we know, and we have both scenarios that we can switch back and forth to pretty easily, I would say.
And just with other districts that, you know, our company works with, we are looking for full in person in the fall, and that's what we want. So,
how does the 3-foot recommendation in the schools for students affect the transportation of the students on the bus?
Yeah, either Sarah or Terry can answer that question for this year.
Do you want to answer it, sir, or you want me to?
I didn't hear it that well. Did you ask about the 3-foot?
3 foot, how does that affect the busing, going forward till the end of the school year now that they're stating kids can be 3 feet apart in the classrooms?
So it's, 3 feet on a bus is still hard, just like 6 feet on a bus. You can't do it. A bus is too small for that. So, I mean, we can load more students onto our buses, but we're risking, what that looks like for COVID exposure then. They have gave us guidance that we can, if we choose to as a district, put more students on the bus. Right now, though, with our buses, we actually are running full buses, even though they don't look full. That's the hard part. Our buses are rostered to full, so every seat has a student name in it. So when we talk about seating charts, we're required to provide seating charts. Every day, we're supposed to take attendance and have a seating chart for that so that we can contact trace. So for us to add more students in a normal non-COVID year, a bus that has 71 students on it, we will easily ride 90 to 100 kids on it. Not that 90 to 100 kids ever ride on it, but we can route for that. We can't do that in this COVID year. We have to have a place for them on the bus in case they do ride. They have to be on the seating chart, and that's where it gets tough. Is because we have full buses. Our buses don't look full, that's for sure, but we technically have full buses, and we don't know how to squeeze more kids in with the guidelines we're given.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions on this?
No, thank you.
Okay, any other items to come before this committee this evening?
I don't have anything.
Hearing nothing? All right. We will adjourn. We'll see everybody in about 30 minutes at the board meeting.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Member Buck? She'll probably be in here. And Chair is here. I'm stepping in for Chair Rowe. She's been excused for this meeting. So I'll call the meeting to order, like I said, for, I should say the date, April 5th, 2021, 6 p.m. We're doing hybrid meeting of the school board, Irving School Board. And we're going to start now with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vision, those of interest. Hearing none.
Just so you know, there's a huge echo. I don't know if you guys hear it on your end, but I hear it on my end. I can barely hear you, Jim.
You hear it now, Board Member Tower, or is it during the Pledge of Allegiance? I heard it too during the pledge.
I hear you better now when you're more focused into it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I think it was probably during the pledge, some feedback. So we'll watch that. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? Superintendent Anderson?
None.
Any board members have anything? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Board Member Ossendorf, second by Board Member Tiff. Start with roll call. Board Member Ossendorf,
Aye.
Board Member Tower,
Aye.
Board Member Tiff,
Aye.
Board Member Buck, Board Member Derrick,
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay. With the communications, with the hybrid meetings, there's a few things that were in our agenda, Hopefully we've had a chance to review them, but a couple things we're gonna go over for the people that are listening and viewing. There's a user calendar invite, list of hybrid school board meeting been named. This will allow the public viewing the stream to know why individual microphones are muted and the sound comes only from one user. For those of us at the media center, there's one microphone. So anything we say will be picked up by that microphone, whereas people in the hybrid will have their own individual microphones. So we're wearing masks up here because, like I said, we're using the same microphone. Consider if you're presenting or attendee other than a board meeting, board member, we ask that you turn your camera off. And then once you're presenting or speaking, we'll ask that you turn it back on. This is because we had some questions about board members not showing up on the picture, and this way we can get that minimized, and hopefully the public out there watching can see what board members are saying and doing that here. So we'll keep troubleshooting this, and we'll keep listening at problems and anything that we have and try to work on that, Charlie and Lisa. And then, I don't know if board member Tiff has said she can consider this, but she apparently is. She considers some training and another board member on these instructions too. So just a couple of things. Really the main thing is if you're presenting or attending and you're not a board member or the superintendent, please turn your camera off for now. Educational plan, I've asked board member Ossendorf to read the mission statement.
The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Okay, thank you. Are there any recognitions or upcoming events anybody would like to present at this time or mention? Superintendent Anderson.
If I could please introduce Marcia Walker. Marcia, if you could turn on your camera. Hello, Marcia. Marcia was recently hired as our special education director for Red Wing Public Schools. And so Sherry and I thought that she could come to this first meeting and at least briefly introduce yourself. Marcia, if you could just explain where you came from, just so that we have an idea of your background.
Thank you, Superintendent and board members, for letting me be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So my background briefly is 25 years experience in the field of special education. My former district, the Columbia Heights Public School District, and I worked there for 8 years as a special education coordinator, and I am really happy to say I had my first day today at Goodhue and visiting the Red Wing, all the schools. We met a lot of people today, and it was really wonderful. So I'm very glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, do you have anything you'd like to mention?
No, I really wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that you could put a face with a name. We are so excited to have Marcia be a part of our team and be here with you. So, again, welcome to her.
Welcome. Anybody else have anything? Any other board members? Or any board members?
Just welcome.
I do have one thing. Last Wednesday, I had the pleasure of going down to Minnesota Marine and Art Museum in Winona with Mr. Bowes and Mrs. Bray. I joined them down there and never heard of the place. Wonderful little museum. If you haven't been there, you're traveling through Winona, you have a few hours or an hour at least. I recommend that you swing in there. It's like $9, and it's a beautiful building. Looks like it's brand new, but it's there, if I recall, maybe 15 years it's been built. And really, the Fastenal company really played a part in bringing it to the Winona area. Talked to Mr. Bowes down there and Mrs. Gray a little bit, and he recommended a few things. The American artists and the European artists have two different displays. I was a little bit favored the American artists, the artistry. A lot of it's in the eastern part of the United States back in the 1800s. Beautiful painting, beautiful building. The other one that I really found interesting was the Titanic exhibition. I took pictures. 1,500 or more people died during the Titanic. There was a radio system developed by somebody, and I don't have it in front of me, that there was overridden when people can communicate from the boat to shore. So they sent out an SOS, the Titanic, and usually at night the person goes to bed that runs this radio system. But the guy in some ship 60 miles away heard the distress call, so they immediately headed that way. It took them 4 hours to get there. 60 miles. Imagine that, traveling 4 hours to get 60 miles in water. And they rescued hundreds of people. And that person that developed that radio system was credited for saving many lives from that event. But anyway, I found it fascinating down there. Thank you to Mr. Bowles for arranging that, and it was I'm glad to be there. So, hearing nothing else, yeah, Board Member Tim.
Thank you, Ms. Burns. I would just like to recognize that today was a big day for many of our 5th through 12th graders back in school full-time, as well as for our staff members. And I'd just like to thank all of our teachers and other staff members for the work that they've done to prepare for today. I heard that in many cases, at least on my side with my family, it was a huge success. So thank you for that.
Well said. Big day here to get kids back in school. Talked to Mr. Choate earlier. Very good day. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move right along. Public comment. I've received nothing. Superintendent Anderson?
I did not receive anything.
Okay. Return to school plan. Return to school.
Yeah, one thing I'll note is that the latest COVID data sheet was uploaded this afternoon. Again, a reminder, we meet every Monday, and so that's why there's always a late addition to the board agenda. That's under the return to school agenda item. Jennifer mentioned kids coming back. It was another great day. We made some adjustments so that we do have online only classes for both 5th grade and 6th grade students who have chosen the online only option. This was a major change that will benefit teachers and students, because teachers then can only need to focus on one mode of learning. You know, it's either the online only or it's the in-person. So we're thrilled to be able to make that happen. We did discuss a possible shortened quarantine in March, and then we said that we would bring it up again in April. And so right now, the COVID team, a response team, and I do not recommend a change in our quarantine procedures, but we'll review it on a regular basis, at least through April. So it'll be in the April 19th board information packet as well in this section. Also, there is information from the Minnesota Department of Health that recommends reviewing learning models if 5% of the school's population is positive or showing signs of symptoms of COVID. We are not at that level, and especially now with more kids in school, you know, obviously the threshold is higher because it's based on a percentage. But I just want to let you know that the COVID response team and I, along with others, are reviewing that data as we move forward. That's all I have for return to school.
Any questions for Superintendent Anderson? Board Member Osendorf?
So in the packet that we have, the quarantine procedures of the district already, I assume these are the procedures that we've already been following. There is a little bit in there of the impact of vaccinations. So if a student or staff member has completed the vaccination and they're at least 2 weeks past their last one, they wouldn't necessarily have to quarantine if they were exposed. We're currently following that then, correct? Or is that a new thing?
I'll pass that on to Shonda to provide that explanation.
That's been, can everyone see me? That's been kind of coming out more and more as more people are getting vaccinated. And now that we have staff that are 2 weeks out of their second dose, we are not having to quarantine them, and we'll do the same with students. And the verbiage was originally 90 days after your last dose is when you don't have to quarantine. They have recently got rid of the 90-day kind of bracket, and they haven't put a specific, it's 6 months, 1 year, that kind of thing. So for the rest of the school year, if you're vaccinated and you're 2 weeks out from your second dose, we also need proof. So we need a copy of the card. And we're getting those slowly coming in. Then you don't have to quarantine if you're a close contact, even if the COVID positive person is a household member. And so that's going to save a lot on the quarantine. And now they just opened up the vaccine to 16 through 18-year-olds. Which is and they opened it up wide. So I would recommend, if you haven't got vaccinated, go get vaccinated. Especially families really consider this, especially seniors. If you get going on it now, then by the time we get around to prom and graduation, there will be a lot less quarantining of students because they will be fully vaccinated. And that's our end goal here for the end of the year, is to just get as many people vaccinated as possible.
Good. I'm glad that you're looking at things as things change, because there's so many different things being thrown out there on a weekly, sometimes daily basis by many groups. If you're not, you're near somebody but don't show symptoms after 5 to 7 days, you test negative, you get quarantined. So keep reviewing it, bring back, the changes that are necessary, because things are changing, and you're absolutely correct. People coming back. Any other thing, Superintendent Anderson?
That's all I have for this topic.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. We have strategic directions 2 and 3. Is that Ms. Whitcomb? Go right ahead. I think we've had the information all sent to us and all that and reviewed, so. You can present? Great.
All right. Everybody see that?
Not yet. No.
And then just a reminder, Jess, that the microphone is up here instead of the computer.
Okay. Thank you.
And because I'm only on one screen, I cannot see anybody on the screen if they're trying to get my attention, so please just unmute if they need to, can they hear me?
They'll show up in the chat if they need something over.
All right. Thank you all for letting me to come and speak today. I know we have a busy agenda, so this will be brief but exciting. I think it's great to be able to talk about the work that all of our staff is doing based on our educational plan. So we had a great suggestion that we always want to come back to this. You all come back to this based on our strategic plan. This is what we're talking about. So direction 2 and 3 on there, that's where we'll focus today based on this plan. As always, we keep our vision and our mission in mind as we talk about our strategic directions and the actions that we're taking. And always having our core values in mind as we think about what actions we prioritize. So focusing today on direction 2 and 3, focusing on instruction and professional growth, improving student learning and engagement, and then creating a responsive, safe, and open, respectful environment. This is just how we have, at this point, put an imagery to kind of how we think about going forward with the educational plan. Always having our student learning, fostering curiosity, and embracing diversity. Obviously, that starts at the ground with our families, our community, and our early childhood. We give the base of alignment through K-9, and then we focus on our career pathways and our flight path journey. So focusing on direction 2, obviously this is highlights of the work that we're doing. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to read the entire 5-year strategic plan to you. We're just highlighting some things that we can share tonight. So one of the things, as you look down under the strategies that the board has asked us to focus on, with effective PLCs, we refocused on data as district-wide. We had made sure that we built in regular meeting time, that we kind of keep it sacred on the admin side and also on the teacher side. We have given additional resources and professional development starting in the beginning of the year to make sure that we are on the same page and aligned district-wide. We also provided support to teachers through professional development. We gave some extra resources in our K-6 Wonders curriculum, so we are now vertically and horizontally aligned with our curriculum. K-12 teachers all have a Google Classroom now. That is a very large accomplishment, and they continue to keep those up. GoGuardian, I would say, is what teachers talk about as their #1 resource this year. They have talked about how not only has it increased their ability to oversee staff or oversee students, it also they're using it as an instructional tool and being able to communicate with students during the day. Also, just the increase in skills and technology on our staff overall, not just our teachers, but our entire staff has increased their technology ability. Also, our students got up to speed, our kindergarten students, utilizing the Google Classroom and understanding the basics of how they can work through and submit work. We are seeing the benefits of that now when they're back in the classroom as well. The admin have utilized classroom walkthroughs to kind of support teachers in how they're going through the curriculum, but also what they can bring back to the administrative team to say where we need to improve based on what they saw in the classroom. Any questions on that direction too? So with direction 3, obviously this is kind of our lives this year. This is everybody's life with COVID and COVID planning. So I'm not going to read everything that we have with COVID planning, but I do kind of want to point out some things through. Is this coming up where the Redwood Public Schools Educational Plan in Action?
I think when you press the link, that's what we got.
I'm going to share this graph instead. How that go?
Yes.
Okay. So as we go, this is the detailed version that we're not going to add to. But I want to show kind of just the intense amount of work that had to happen with COVID and say a few thank yous. So as you go down, hopefully nobody's getting sick here. Let's run direction 3. If we look at our COVID updates here, as you can see, we kind of we have thank yous to Brent Lexfold and the shifts that he made in food service. We have thank yous to obviously our COVID response team and all the work that they did with Chanda and Joni and Dawn. We have a thank yous to Alan Baylor and how he had to shift the entire staff to make sure that our kids could walk into a building and our teachers could walk into a building and feel safe in order to learn. We had sports and activities able to develop COVID plans so that students could have that ability outside of the school day as well. So as you can see, I'm obviously not going to read all of this to you, but just the amount of work that we had to shift and staff had to shift in order to create that responsive and safe environment. So as we go back here, that was kind of an add-on for us, but as we kept going with the referendum promises, additional resources were added to enhance student behavior through the alignment of expectations for our PBIS coordinator. Even though she was pulled back in to teach 3rd grade, she still kept up aligning our K-6 expectations on PBIS and putting that structure in place. We obviously have the 2nd assistant principal at Reading High School to help support and enhance student behavior there. Through improved communications, we have been doing community outreach presentations where we're presenting things exactly like this so that community understands and we can thank them for passing the referendum and showing them that we are still keeping true to our promises. For student mental health, we have Wellness Wednesdays at the K-6 team. There's a district wellness team that talks about staff mental health, led by Brent Lexfold. And our social emotional learning and equity is also a big part of this direction, but I know you all have a April 26th workshop, so I'm going to leave that there so we can present more on that at that time. Any questions?
Any questions at all? See anything?
I could have a quick
Superintendent
comment.
Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Bryant. Just a note that I did include 2 sections from that education plan and action document. And by the way, that document that Jess showed briefly is kind of a comprehensive list of the things that we did last year, that we're doing this year, and that we're planning to do in the future over the 5-year period. It's really detailed information. I shared parts of it for strategic directions 2 and 3 in the board packet. And so I encourage you to read through it to see what we are doing and to ask any questions at any time. But I think you'll see that a lot has happened even during a year of COVID.
Thank you. One more, other one, Ms. Welcome, thank you. You know, you're right for pointing out the number of people that helped make this year go as well as it could. Now, you didn't mention there's many others. I get that. The report shows that, but it's truly an unusual year. We'll get back to Board Member Tiff mentioned some normalcy today with all the kids that wanted to come back. We're back in person today. So going forward, thank you for doing that, for this report. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go on to school board reports. We'll start with the Finance Committee. Board Member Howard?
Yes, the Finance Committee had an extensive opportunity at our workshop to talk about the budget. And I think that in tonight's notes, we'll have some more conversation around what that conversation entailed. So I'll just kind of defer to that next piece.
Okay. We did discuss it quite late, so hopefully we'll come to a quick consensus tonight and go forward. So thank you. I'll go on to Personnel Committee.
Thank you. I stepped in for Board Chair Rowe this evening as she was absent, and we had a pretty lengthy discussion about our processes for hiring and rebanding and that process, and then what it looks like for each group in terms of union staff, at-will employees, and who we share that information with, and how we get things rebanded, and then what that's going to look like specifically. Superintendent Karsten said that he's hoping to enhance the process, and he would like to kind of move it slow to get it up and running the way that I think many of us have suggested. And Superintendent Anderson, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think we also reviewed kind of a couple of paragraphs about position descriptions, position ratings, pay equity, and that kind of thing. And so the Personnel Committee is going to review that and send me any feedback before we include it in the handbook. That was one of the items anyway.
Yeah, it was quite a good long discussion about it though. And I encourage people to go back and watch it just to kind of get clarification on what were some of the specifics. And we talked about staff in terms of who gets to work from home during this process and who doesn't work from home. And I had about an hour to reflect on that conversation after our Personnel Committee meeting. And I'm not comfortable with certain aspects. And so I'll kind of explain what I'm talking about. I took some good notes. So the state on March 11th signed a document that enforced the American Rescue Plan, COVID Relief Plan. And in that, it states that we can continue the 10 emergency days for staff through September 30th. And it doesn't seem like a huge ask. I know that we have some things in place, vaccinations and, different things like that. But then on the flip side, some of the office staff or the directors or admin get an option to work from home. So it seemed kind of two things were happening at the same time, like essential staff, which is teaching staff, are not allowed to take any more emergency sick days. But office staff or directors can opt to still work from home. And so my thoughts on that were, is everybody in the school district an essential employee? Because if so, then everybody in the school district is afforded free daycare if there are daycare issues, and I don't know if there are, but Jackie and Karsten and Amy had basically said they don't want to opt in to the American Rescue Plan for the remainder of the school year. And that was their recommendation. There's no voting. We didn't do anything on that. However, I still am not comfortable with that. And so I wanted the board to kind of have an opportunity to ask questions to Karsten a little bit more specifically around, so if a staff person has used up all of their sick days and there are circumstances around COVID that would need them to take time off, those days aren't going to be available because Red Wing is choosing not to opt into that. But as we know, kids get sick. There's lingering effects of COVID. There's family members that get COVID. So there are multiple things that could still happen in the remainder of the year, especially with full kids. And so I just want us to have a little bit more robust dialogue about how that plays out. And Karsten, my one question to you, are district directors and office staff, are they essential employees?
Well, as far as that particular law, at least my understanding, is that it is for all school employees, not just the essential school employees.
To have option for free daycare?
No, the Family First Corona Relief Act, and now the latest version of it. At least my understanding is that it's for all school employees. So, if there was someone who had COVID, since the law was enacted, they could take up to 10 leave days through the Coronavirus Act, regardless of their type of employment with school districts. So it wasn't just for essential employees or not. So that's that one part of the law. I don't think that district directors would be considered essential employees, but that's a separate issue in terms of who gets the leave, the COVID leave.
So, am I saying, is my summary clear then, that staff are not allowed, because we're not opting into the American Rescue Plan, to have an additional 10 days if they've already used up their 10 COVID days?
Yeah, and Jackie is, I think, maybe going to speak here. Jackie, do you want to go, or do you want me to answer that question?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
If you want to answer that question.
Yeah, there have been multiple rounds of what I call COVID leave, just to simplify the message. And the first round had a certain deadline. The school board, at our recommendation, extended that deadline from December 31st to March 31st. But that law did not add more days to COVID leave. The maximum has always been 10 days that an employee could take of COVID leave, regardless of when it happened. So it didn't go from 10 days to 20 days. It's always been a max of 10. And, I was a strong proponent of extending it to March 31st, and I think it probably passed unanimously here at the board level. Now the situation is different in terms of how many of our staff members have received vaccinations. And so we don't think that extending it, beyond March 31st is necessary. At least that's our perspective. We could certainly, bring it forward for further discussion with the whole board, when we have a chance to have Amy present and, Jackie to provide more information. One thing we did talk about during the committee today is that our understanding is that, we could always extend it, at a later time. We don't have to do it, before March 31st. Obviously, it'd be too late to do that anyway, but we could decide, well, there's a new variant. The vaccination isn't working well enough. We have a lot of people who are sick from work, and so then we could institute it at that time.
I guess, Jackie, my issue is that some people are afforded to work from home because they have flexible work options, but some people aren't. So, and then some people have to take sick time because they're not afforded to work from home, while others will not have to take sick time. So that's where my movement more into accepting the American Rescue Plan that was just voted on would make more sense, and it would be more kind. So I'm ready to hear from anybody.
Okay, I'll jump in real quick. I think there's two different issues you're talking about. The governor came out with an order on the 15th that stating people that were working remotely go back into work, and that, and then what you're talking about, this rescue plan. I think it's a good dialogue at a future meeting, because some of us don't even know the conversation that you had with your committee. So it's not fair for us to start jumping in on something without having some background information as to why the recommendation was that way and such. So I don't think we need to debate it now, because I don't think it's fair to us, some of us that went on the committee, to have a dialogue without further information in front of us.
I completely agree with you, Jim. However, time is of the essence, and we just entered several hundred kids today. So I think for teachers and staff that are in the buildings to have that extra pressure, and I'm not saying we should debate it. I'm just saying waiting another week or 2 weeks, could impact people. And you're right, you don't know the background, so. Jennifer, do you want to add anything?
I would just say, thank you, Holly, for bringing that up again, because it wasn't sitting right with me as well. But I don't know that we have enough information tonight to be able to discuss it. If we could add it to the agenda for our next board meeting so that we can talk about it, I think that would be helpful. I know that's not best case scenario for our staff who are possibly needing this. I just think it's I think it's probably correct that it will not be needed as often, and we sure hope that it's not, but as Holly stated, there are some situations where people have maybe had COVID and are not completely through with that, and then also, our kids are not vaccinated, and so they could possibly be bringing it home or get sick, and parents would need to stay home with them. So I do think it's still an issue, and so I think it should be brought up here.
Okay. Board Member Darius. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I would be very supportive of us extending the, I'm not sure what the right words are, the 10-day rescue plan for use one time through the end of the school year. And for simplicity, I'd just say through June 30th, which is the end of the school calendar or the school fiscal year. If it's possible that we could have staff that did not get vaccinated that could get COVID and has not had COVID yet, and I think they should be allowed to collect those 10 days if something like that would happen. So as far as the rest of the stuff, I just don't, that's just the way it is. Some people can work from home. They're going to work from home if they're sick, and if they're not, they're not. But I would certainly welcome an offer, if others are in favor of it, to extending that whatever we call that COVID 10-day pay, which the governor paid up till end of the calendar year, and then we did the first 3 months. I think it would be fair to extend it to the end of the school year. So hopefully I'll hear back on that at a later time if others are in favor of it. Thank you.
Just had a clarifying question, Kirsten. Before we extended it, and it wouldn't be an additional 10 days, this is not an additional 10 days either, or it is? It is? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if someone has already used their 10 days, this could be an additional 10 days. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference between this one and the last one.
Thank you for asking that clarifying question. I wasn't aware there was an additional 10 days. I know the second COVID leave was not. So thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, it is an additional 10 days. The first extension we did in January was just for those who hadn't used their original 10 days. So this is additional. So we could have staff that over the course of 18 months could use 20 days of COVID leave. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll gladly bring it to the next April 19th meeting.
I'm not ready to vote on something I don't have information in front of me. I'm glad Board Member Keller brought it up. I was sitting in the back room here. I was here earlier. I heard a little bit about it, but I didn't pick up on all the conversations, dialogue, or had the information in front of me. You have anything else there, Board Member Keller, or Board Member Tiff on the personnel? Okay, thank you.
Yes, one thing.
Certainly.
There was an opportunity for us to talk about the community recreation coordinator position, in which it was posted, and Jim, you and I were part of that joint powers agreement, which was a long process. And from that, we have to hire somebody now, and they put out the job rec, and somebody has applied, and they've done the interview. So everything was done correctly. And so we're hoping that we can move forward with that tonight.
Thank you. Legislative and Policy Committee, Board Member Darius.
Yeah, there really is not much to report. We met, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? The notes from the meeting are in the board packet. So we've worked on different policies here and there, but have not gone into things in depth and a lot of others. So I think just reading the report would be sufficient.
And I'll report on the Operations Committee. We met this morning, 4:45 today before this regular board meeting. Really a couple of things. Brent Lexvold, the Food Service Director, brought his 10-year plan. He's already through 2 years of it. He purchased some convection ovens some time ago before COVID. They were twice as much as what he got them for now. So he's able to buy a couple for the same price he could have bought one. And So that was a good thing. He needed them, and a good thing that he has his fund there for that. We also heard about kind of the busing update from First Student, and how they're handling things and doing things, and they'll come back to the full board in August with the plan for the next school year after we make a decision, and if we're going all in, all person ready to come in September, how we're going to handle that. And lastly, we talked about the playground equipment at the middle school. I drove by the other day, and there's just a pile of I think board member Tower called them little people out there, and on the tennis courts, on the grass, running around. So truly a need for that time, because the teachers are trying to be innovative in ways to try to keep them busy for that time period outside. Mr. Palmetier talked about watching 20 minutes of maybe somebody else could
Line tag.
line tag. The kids were playing, and they loved it. Well, who could? It was probably 70 degrees outside when they did it. And so on April 5th. The other thing, the natural playground looks like it might actually be in by May, if not June, but by May. We also talked about the other school playground that we had initially talked about operations. There's some fundraising going on. Alan, Mr. Gaylor has also spoken to the city, went to the city council. They're on board for doing infrastructure, storm sewer, helping with getting the site prepared. And that's a tune of right around $50,000. We have a great partnership with the city of Redmond and the Public Works Department. There's a push, and a much needed push, to try to get it in sooner than later. Funding right now is about $25,000. We don't have concrete numbers. We kind of threw a number of dollar amounts around there. So we've asked them to come to the next school board meeting with a budget of what they need to raise, what they expect the school district to pay, and how, and if the equipment can be ordered as late as mid-June, early first part of July. And so getting it in place by late summer or early this fall. We weren't comfortable, I don't think, being willing to expend and commit X number of dollars without having something more in place that would then kind of what Sunnyside playground went with. And that was more of a handicap structured type of playground, which is used, very nice. So you'll see that in the coming meeting there. Board member Tiff or board member Derek, do you have anything to add before I go to board member Tower at the queue? Nothing? Board member Tower.
Thank you. Hey, so I had a thought about this playground over at the Twin Bluff. A constituent emailed me and asked why we can't use the COVID funds for that. And then there was a rationale because the playground was put up before COVID came around, and it wouldn't seem like we were doing it because of COVID. We're doing it because we needed a playground. We're using the money wrong. However, that was before we had to loop a whole group of students twice through the school. And so I'm wondering if COVID money could be used for that, simply because playing and mental health are critical for kids. And could there be an argument made that this group of students will have gone 2 years without a playground? And it's not equitable unless we want to rotate the schools, like all the Jefferson kids go to Twin Bluff and all the Twin Bluff kids go to, that's where my head's at in terms of equity. And could there be an argument made that we could use the COVID funds because of that? So I don't have any answers, but somebody did bring it to my attention, and I want us to kind of problem solve, be creative, but also know that it's not equitable.
Okay. I have an answer, I think, for you. Go ahead, Superintendent Anderson.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to Jackie because she's the one who analyzed it. If you're okay with that, Chair Brian?
Yes.
All right, our guidance on using the ESSER funds, and I have not gotten guidance on ESSER 3 yet, which was just approved here in March, but the guidance on ESSER 2 is we would have to apply to the state for permission first because it's equipment. And when we apply, we would have to guarantee that we have met some of the other COVID needs the state has made priority, such as sanitation, mental health, technology. We would have to say that we have used the other ESSER funds to fulfill all of those needs before using it on other building expenses is what they would call them.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Dirks? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if Carson or Jackie can maybe answer this. I personally think that COVID dollars could be put towards this also, but is it really necessary if we are questionable? Will we be able to spend all the COVID dollars that are available or not? If we are going to spend it anyway, then maybe it's a moot point and maybe we can just agree that we can take, I know we're into budget cuts and everything else, but a larger allotment out of the general fund to get this thing done rather than worrying about COVID. If the COVID dollars are going to be used anyway, what's the difference? They're all coming in to the general fund to go out for COVID one way or another, I believe. And so if we're using it all for COVID, it really doesn't matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Brad Harlan's approach would be the way to go. Jackie doesn't have all the guidelines for ESSER 3 yet, but I'm confident that we'll be able to find appropriate expenditures that we can use those funds to pay for. And then that will hopefully free up some other funds so we can do, something like the middle school playground. So I'm hoping that in 2 weeks when we bring the information to the board, we'll include that as part of the packet. We won't know all the rules yet unnecessarily, but I think we'll have a good idea.
Yeah, the idea of bringing it to the board also is to let the public, we're having it, this is our target for the funds for this playground. We need to know by this date what we can match, get it done this year. So those are the real reason the reasons to come before the board for it. So people know instead of just saying we're raising it, we'll use it sometime down the road. But give them a target. We get it raised this X number of dollars by this date, we can get her in, we can get her done. Okay, they're saying nothing. Any other committees that have anybody has that they would like to, or meetings that they're on involved in at all? Anybody else?
With the equity committee, there will be things coming to the meeting in April, at the end of April, our workshop. And with community education and recreation, there's information in the board packet. I'm not going to go over it, but there is a new catalog of the classes being offered for community ed and recreation and some updates from them as well in the board packet.
Good, thank you. There's nothing else, we'll go on to administrative reports.
Thank you. I'll just highlight a couple of different things. First, I'll repeat what Anna said. The community ed brochure is fantastic, even during a year of COVID. We did include that as an extra. It's also on the school district's website. There is discussion about the appropriate school starting and ending times. So I did send an article out to board members, and that's a discussion we'll need to have. High school's initial request was to start earlier. If we have a two-tier system, they'd like to start earlier. Elementary leaders would like a longer instructional day. And so I did meet with our transportation department to see what they can do in terms of meeting those two requests. We are proceeding with the Achievement and Integration Program planning. That does not mean that we have to commit as a school district or a school board, but we are planning to meet with Lake City and some other neighboring school districts if they're interested to increase racial and economic integration and reduce achievement disparities. And so Jess has been leading that effort, but she'll involve a number of people as we move forward, including the equity team and other important stakeholders. Really, that's all I have right now, unless there are any questions.
Board Member Derrick.
Thank you. I just want to go on record that I am not in favor of going to an earlier starting time at the high school, or at least not much earlier. I did some research going back 50 years ago. At that time, the school day for high school was from 8:25 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. on a 7-period day. And that was back in my era, little less than 50 years ago, but as a senior. But I don't think at that time I would have liked getting to school at high school any earlier than 8:25. So it was just another way of putting it in perspective, besides all the testament we had a year ago, a year and a half ago, whatever it was, about starting times and block schedules and stuff, and the need to get for high school students, clocks to get working in their body the way they should. So I'm just going on record, I won't support an earlier start time.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, I have something. We'll try to speak up, I guess. We're probably not being heard that well, so we'll do our best. Superintendent Anderson, question, if you could pass on to Principal Nemenich and administrative team. Question. That's all it is. It's a question by me. An area school is, with prom last year being canceled, has invited their seniors who graduated last year to come back for prom. Just curious if that's been considered or thought of. This school probably doesn't expect a great number of them to come back, because many of them are in college or done with high school. But it was kind of an interesting idea. Prom went out the door last year with COVID, so I just share that with you. You can share with your admin team.
Yeah, I'll pass that on to Mr.
Thank you.
Nemenich.
Thank you. Seeing nothing else, we'll go on to consent agenda items.
Yeah, please note that there was an updated consent agenda put on the board packet. So if you print out an earlier version, please look at the online version now.
Thank you. Anybody have anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Board Member Derrick.
Yes, I would like to pull items 3, change in non-classified, and item 4, new hires.
3 and 4. Anybody else have anything else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to the rest of the consent agenda, with the exclusion at this time for number 3 and 4.
Anna, so moved.
Board Member Osendorf said motion to approve. Is there a second?
Yep, second.
Member Tiff, second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify. Oh, we can't do that. We gotta do roll call vote. Bear with me. Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Buck. Vicky. Board Member Derrick.
Aye.
Board Member Osendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Bryant says aye. Okay, we'll go back to number 3. Board Member Derrick.
Yeah, I just all of a sudden this change in non-classified and this whole program and combining of this position caught me surprised by this being here all of a sudden just in the board packet here. I have concerns about merging this stuff the way it is. I've often wondered why we don't have the janitors maintain the pool and the chemicals. They maintain the hockey rink and ice, so it seems to me. And so I can't vote in favor of it at this time. And then because of that, when we get to new hires, I'll talk about, I will not vote in favor of that hire. So thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion. We'll do number 3 first. Board Member Tiff.
I'm just wondering if I'm not sure the procedure here, but if we can discuss that number 3 a little bit more. That was
Certainly.
something that we talked about at the personnel committee.
Now, we can do a motion, and we can always discuss after the motion. too.
Okay.
Or motion to approve or not approve, number 3? Is
Motion to approve.
there a second?
Anna, second.
Motion by Board Member Tower, and a second by Board Member Ossendorf, Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
No, we want more discussion. We want to discuss it more.
Got it. I was just wondering if Dawn could explain a little bit more
Sure.
about position.
Ms. Weathern, are you on the call?
Sure.
Yes, I am.
Okay,
I didn't hear what Jennifer had, what she had indicated. Well, I can't hear her very well.
Sorry, Dawn, I was just asking if you could explain a little bit more about the position that we talked about with the discontinuance of the aquatics director and
Yes.
the new position. If you could explain that a little bit more.
Yes, really. That conversation did take place several years ago about combining some of the responsibilities at the Twin Bluff Pool with the community recreation position to save money for both positions. But because we had the Joint Powers Board, we were restricted to the governing board. So when that dissolved in February, that was the perfect time to reevaluate that position and look at combining some of those responsibilities. So at this time, that individual, the aquatics director, is also in charge of swimming lessons for middle school, but because the middle school isn't a middle school, those lessons are not happening. So really what that individual is doing is checking the chemicals, and then they are the coach for the boys and girls teams. So that was what that position was. So when we reevaluated it, the chemical piece was pulled out, and then the coaching positions were eliminated from that. And so we had that job description sent to be rebanded and regraded with those new duties added. The only thing I wanted to make sure is when the lessons were added back in that we would reevaluate that job. So currently that job is being divided a little bit between the general fund and community education. And so with there not being the governing board, we were able to pull that together and hire a position that we felt was going to, move us into the next few years for community recreation. So that individual was, we put out the job, and we got some really fantastic people that applied, and we hired the best, or we're hoping to hire the best candidate. So are there other questions or clarification?
yes, Board Member Tower.
So I heard Arlen say something about the chemicals. Why can't the custodial staff do the chemicals? And then I heard you say, Dawn, that this new hire isn't doing the chemicals.
No, they are doing the chemicals. They're not going to be doing the coaching. The coaching are those two pieces there. And because we're not a middle school, they will not be coordinating any swimming lessons during the day.
Is this person also the one working with the pool, Colville Pool?
Correct. And doing
so
that. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. They have dual pool responsibilities with the chemicals and all of that.
Correct.
Okay, I get it.
Okay. Anything else? Not, I'll start with Board Member Tiff. On number 3.
Yes, aye.
Aye. Board Member Darius.
No.
Board Member Buck. Nikki.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Bryant says aye. Passes 5-1. Board Member Darius, number 4. Pull that one.
Sure, thank you. Once again, because of my disapproval of this position in the first place, I will not be voting to approve Michaela Beach for this position. So however somebody makes a motion, and you make one for everything but that, I'll vote yes, or else you can just make a motion to approve all of them, and I'll vote no, and I'm sure it'll go through. So thank you.
I would like to clarify the process if I could. When people leave the long-term positions, we as directors and leaders of the school should reevaluate job duties. When the last time that job, community recreation, was evaluated was several years ago. As time changed and more duties are added to it or taken away, as good leaders, fiscally responsible, we should always reevaluate positions to see if they are banded and graded the same. Sometimes they come in higher, sometimes they come in lower. But that's our responsibilities as, fiscal managers of the school to make sure that we look at positions anytime a position is open. And that's what I've made, a effort to do. We fortunately don't have a lot of turnover in community ed, especially in a coordinator's position. But I think we need to reevaluate. Again, sometimes things are coming in higher, sometimes they're coming in lower. But unfortunately, in the last few years, community recreation staff have added a lot of responsibilities to their plates. And so therefore, we're expecting more. Many of our positions are responsible 7 days a week. They're on call 7 days a week, from early in the morning till late at night. So, I just like to, share that. I'm hoping we're doing that in all of the areas of our district, making sure that those jobs are evaluated appropriately and banded and graded appropriately for the work that's being done. Perfect time to do that is when a person leaves a position before you hire someone new.
Board Member Dirks.
Thank you. I might, indeed, what Dawn is saying may be 100% correct. I just do not agree, and I do not appreciate having this shoved in front of me at the Wednesday before the board meeting. We're going to change a classification of an employee and then have a vote on making the change with me not having any knowledge of this ever even being discussed in the past. So I'm just standing to myself. Thank you.
Yep. Member Tower.
Arlen, this was discussed at the March 8th Personnel Committee, and it was brought to the board at that time. There was probably not a very fruitful discussion around it, but it was brought to the board. So I just want you to know that did happen. And anybody else want to jump in? Pam isn't here. She's the chair of that committee. But Jennifer, do you remember us discussing it and bringing it?
I do, Holly. I was going to say the same thing. It has been talked about for the last two personnel meetings.
Right.
All right. What's the board wishes? We don't have a motion yet either way on number 4.
I will make a motion to approve number 4 as is.
Motion by Board Member Tiff to approve number 4 as submitted. Is there a second? Second by Board Member Tower. Start with Board Member Buck.
Aye.
Board Member Dirks.
No.
Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Bryant votes aye. Passes 5-1. Okay, thank you. Donations and grants. Superintendent Anderson.
I just need to find my chart here.
Oh, okay. I can take it if you want.
Yeah, there is a resolution accepting donations and grants. The first donation is a gift from Mayo Clinic in Rochester for 3 books called Art of Healing at Mayo Clinic. And I've seen one of them just real quickly. And so we appreciate that. It's always good information and important information to share. We also have donations from Molly and Ryan Kiefer and Jan and Brian Sutton for a total of $2,000. That's to purchase books that amplify marginalized voices. And so we really appreciate the donations that the Kiefers and Suttons made to the district to benefit our students. So thank you.
Thank you. What's the board wish to do? Need a motion, please.
Anna will make a motion to approve the donations.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Tiff, a second.
Motion by Board Member Ossendorf, second by Board Member Tiff. Any discussion? I'll just say thank you very much for their generous donation. That was Board Member Dirks.
Aye.
Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Buck.
Aye.
Board Chair Brian votes aye. Passes 6-0. All right. Budget reconciliation reasons and target. I knew I'd stumble on that one a little bit.
Yeah, we have 3 different items related to the budget reconciliation process. This first item talks about why we have a reconciliation process. And then we'll talk about the specific program reductions, and then finally the list of non-renewals. They're all separate but equal, or integrated at the same time. So first of all, just need to remind the board why we're going through a budget reconciliation process. A reminder that this year we hired significantly more staff and had significantly higher operations expenses because of COVID. We needed to hire online teachers. We wanted to have enough staff so we could socially distance throughout our buildings with classes, and that led to significantly higher expenses. So that's a big reason why we're going through this process now. Also, like other school districts throughout the state, we have fewer students this year compared to last year. And I don't remember the state numbers, but for Red Wing, it's about 120 students fewer than what we had in May of 2020. And so declining enrollment in general, but because of COVID in particular, we've been particularly hard hit. Of course, when we have fewer kids, then we receive less state money. And so that's another significant reason for the budget reconciliation process. Some other things that are more bureaucratic for budget assumptions, we assumed a 0% state increase. We're hoping it's going to be higher now, but that has not been finalized. So, I think it's appropriate to be cautious, when we're making this decision. So we're assuming 0% for now. Also, we did not include some of the COVID funding that will be received from the federal government. And so when we get all those rules and regulations, we'll be coming back to the school board to explain how we hope to spend that money. So I don't know if you have any questions or if I should just go on to the next item.
Well, we have you want to do individual motions, that we talked about this at our workshop 2 weeks ago, I think it was, quite a lengthy discussion on it. And there's a motion, there's a recommendation. Probably should take them individually recommendation, but before that, I have board member Derek's in the queue.
Thank you. I could go along in general with any one of these, the 2.2, 2.5, 3 million. However, I can't go along with what I think I'm reading into here on everything. And so before I vote on whatever we're doing, I want to be assured that we are going to get our busing back to what we promised with the referendum, and that we are not going to continue the 2-mile walking zone. I'm trying to remember, what is it, 1 mile and 1.5 mile? Whatever it is, we must, in my opinion, honor that referendum. And then also classroom size targets I need to make sure that we have those in place regardless of what we decide. And if there's other key things from the referendum, I might be overlooking them. I know we talk counselors and different things, but I don't look at this as totally a spending cut. It's a reduction of eliminating the COVID expenses that we had this year, and it's right sizing. That's what I view this as, what we're doing. And with our staff, right sizing with our staff. So can I have are these different cuts, the 2.2, the 2.5, and the 3, are they specific on each item, or how can I be assured that we're not going to continue a 2-mile bus walking zone?
Superintendent Anderson.
Yeah, if I could, and I apologize, I was kind of differentiating reasons for the reconciliation, and then I was going to jump into the actual recommendation for budget reduction targets. So how about if I answer that first, and then I'll answer your question, Arlen. At the last workshop session, we did look at multiple different budget reconciliation options. The discussion zeroed in on 2.2 million and 3 million, or at least somewhere in between those two figures. So I did include in the packet today a potential list at 2.2 million, another one at 2.5 million, and then a third one at 3 million, and kind of listed what the administrative recommendations would be for each one of those budget reconciliation targets. And so that information is in here. Consistent with what Jackie Paradis recommended, My recommendation is to set a budget reconciliation target of 2.2 million for fiscal year 2022. However, as I said, we have plans set up regardless of the amount that the board decides to target. So that's my recommendation for tonight. To answer your question, Arlen, if you look at that particular chart, you can see that at the towards the end, under the other category, the first reduction of $60,000, if there's a $2.2 million reduction, assumes that we would have a 2-mile no bus zone for grades 7 through 12 and a 1-mile no bus zone for grades K through 6. That's what I asked our transportation router to program on. So I don't have the results of that yet, but I'm assuming that we could do that and still reduce one bus route, which would save us $60,000. So as of April 15th, I cannot guarantee it, but I'm going to make every effort to make that happen because that was involved with our referendum promise. I got to give a disclaimer though. If we have social distancing guidelines or if there's something else significant like that going on, then then we have to go back to the drawing board and rethink things just like we did this year. But everything I'm pushing for is to go to the 2-mile for the secondary, 1 mile for elementary.
Board Member Keller.
Thank you. I did put Arlen in the queue because I was going to thank him, but that meant to be verbal. So thank you, Arlen, for bringing that up and being so passionate about it. I agree with you. After hearing Superintendent Anderson, I'm still not in favor of kids having to walk 2 miles to school. I'm definitely not in favor of little people having to walk 2 miles to school, but it's a long day in general, and walking 2 miles and walking home 2 miles is a big thing. So I want to know, much like Arlen, how we can move that into the 7th and 12th grade also.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Ossenbeck.
So this is sort of tied into the busing, but my question is, the high school is requesting that we have an earlier start time for high school, which we have not approved or rejected at this point, but does that factor into the transportation routes or not really? Like, are we currently with the split times, are we, using a Sunnyside bus to then do the high school route? So if we did that, if we opted to go with an earlier start time for the high school, would we have higher transportation costs?
Yeah, thank you. Good questions from both Holly and Anna. First, right now we don't have a plan to reduce the no bus zone for the secondary kids to less than 2 miles. After we get the initial run, we can certainly discuss other options. But right now they're kind of planning on the 1 mile and 2 mile. And they're also kind of setting it up so that the high school kids would go first, but the elementary kids would have a longer instructional day. And it's also assuming a 2-tier system, a 2-tier bus system. And that's, I think, to your question, Anna. They're going to program to that initially. I think we could flip, the start times, so that if at some point you decide, no, let's keep it like it is this year, let's have elementary kids go first and then secondary later, I think we can make that happen. The issue, I think, that really determines how many buses we need would be if we have a 1-tier or 2-tier system. So we have driver shortages, which causes some problems with finding enough drivers to have a 1-tier system. We think a 2-tier system is more affordable, but it's going to require First Student to change their contract to give us a better rates. And so we're working with First Student on that. So it's all going to be kind of rolled in together in order to see where we are.
Okay, thank you. I'll just add here before we get a motion here is, I don't think anybody wants to see the 2 mile busing buffer zone. I think we're gonna work however we can best to do that. But I'm hearing tonight that we don't have a definite answer one way or the other, but striving towards trying to make that work. Also next year, we're down 120, but I think that number's even greater now, that we're down from the other day as to number of students. So we're gonna have potentially less students, so that will affect the busing too. With that lost student comes less revenue. We've had that discussion about how less revenue, Superintendent Anderson just hit that on there. And I'll just throw it out there again as we talked at meeting. The cuts we do today, I think Board Member Derrick brought this up, are $1 million of it or something to that number, if my memory serves me correct, with COVID. And the rest are other cuts that we're doing through attrition and other means that they're bringing forward. We can go 2.2, we can go however number with the board wishes tonight, but remember next year, whatever we don't cut this year, we potentially have to look at cutting next year. So I'm just throwing it out there. They're gonna be, with Montessori's cottage opening up as we're hearing, there's probably potentially looking at even less students in 2022 than we have in 2020. So with that, Superintendent Anderson, did you have another comment?
Yeah, just a real quick comment. The board is being requested to approve the $2.2 million budget reconciliation. That does not mean that the specific list of reductions is included in that.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear about that. That'll be the next recommendation, so we can certainly talk about it more.
So I'll entertain a motion to one way or the other for the reconciliation numbers target.
I move to set a budget reconciliation target of 2.2 million for fiscal year 2022.
Tiff will second.
Motion by Towers, second by Tiff. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start with Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Buck. Nikki.
She left.
Okay, Board Member Derrick.
Aye.
And chair votes no. Passes 5-1. Okay, we'll go on.
I think 4-1.
Would be 4-1.
4-1. Hey.
I got you. It's Sesame Street. I got you.
We'll get better math at that, so I would. So, thank you for clarifying this. 4-1. You're correct. Thank you. Next item, resolution discontinuing, reducing, and adding programs, positions, and budgets.
Well, this is
Superintendent Anderson, go ahead.
always a difficult item to bring up whenever we're making reductions, because it impacts kids and parents and of course staff members. At the same time, we know that we need to make significant reductions, and so the administrative team has been talking about all sorts of different options, and I've been involved with those discussions, and so this is my recommendation, based on a lot of input. I wish we didn't have to make all the cuts that are being proposed. One thing before I forget is that I would like to change one item. It's actually a minor change, and that is for item number 11. Instead of reducing 0.6 high school industrial tech position, I'd like to change that to 1.6 high school industrial technology position. But at the same time, we would delete item number 9, which is a full-time project lead the way position. Project Lead the Way is part of the industrial tech program, and so I'd like to have that as part of the overall umbrella for industrial tech, because our current Project Lead the instructor also teaches some other industrial tech programs. So if we could make that change, it really doesn't impact particular people. It's just a bureaucratic thing.
Thank you. Board Member Tower, thank you.
So am I understanding from what I'm reading, I just want to be very clear, the high school is moving to a 7-period day?
Yeah, George or Mr. Nemenich informed me today that that's going to be his recommendation for next year, is to have a 7-period day. We can move ahead with this particular resolution regardless of that decision. It was set up so that it could be a 7 or an 8 period day for schedule for next year. But he did announce that to his staff today that that's the plan for next year.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Is there a motion to adopt the following resolution presented in the packet?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Board Member Ossendorf. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Tower. Further discussion? Superintendent Anderson.
If I could just clarify if that would include the
Yes,
the
as
information that I
amended.
presented. Okay.
The corrected version? Yes. Thank you. Board Member Tower, you were quick.
Thank you. What does that put our class sizes at the high school for our core classes?
Core classes, well, this, assuming that we have all kids who are, who are not in person come back, so everyone is back in the high school. Our typical class sizes, according to Mr. Nemenich, hold on just a second, I have that here. I have, I got the latest information from Mr. Nemenich. Right now, in previous years, according to George, core teachers had typical class size of 25 to 28 on average. Some lower, some higher. For next year, the class sizes for core teachers would be between 28 and 32 approximately, according to Mr. Nemenich. But again, that's assuming everyone is back in person. So as we learn about more kids who will not be here in person, then those average class sizes will come down from that.
Good question. All right, we have a motion on the floor. A second. Start with Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Derricks.
Aye.
Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 5-0, 5-0. How's my math now? Pretty good?
Yes.
No more cookies in the cookie jar.
What was that?
I said there's no more cookies in that cookie jar. You take out 5, there was 5, there's 0.
All right, we'll go on to teacher non-renewals and Superintendent Anderson. I'll let you, this is kind of a procedure that we do annually.
We do, and of course this year it's the list is lengthier for several reasons. First of all, we have what are called Tier 2 teachers. So those are teachers who do not have the full teacher license that we need in Minnesota. And so every year we non-renew those individuals, and they may be hired back if there's an opening. So that's one reason. We also have numerous teachers who are on out-of-field permissions or OFPs. And those are people with a full license, but we want them to be teaching in areas where they're not licensed. So it could be a German teacher who is going to teach social studies. The German teacher may not have that social studies license, and so if we can't find another qualified candidate, we can obtain an OFP from the state for that particular person. Once again, we need to non-renew people who are teaching here because of an OFP. We have to advertise for 60 days according to state guidelines, and then we could hire the same person back if that works out. That's very common in special education areas. And so you see a lengthy list of our special education teachers, and many, if not all of them, hopefully will be back next year, depending on the application or the posting process. And then finally, of course, we do have a budget reconciliation target that we need to meet, especially the number of online teachers. I think we're 9 this year, and so we need to reduce those. Some of them, again, may be hired back. Depending on how we use our COVID funds. We will be offering an online school next year. but we don't have the numbers yet in terms of how many first graders we'll have, or fourth graders, or juniors. And so we need to get that information before we start hiring people back using COVID funds. So it will take some time, but we will get there. So regretfully, the recommendation is to terminate and non-renew the teaching contracts of about 25 teachers that are included in the board packet. And I tried to include if they're tier 2 or OFP, but then it also includes budget reduction teachers as well.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Anderson. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Anna Ostendorf, I move to approve the resolutions relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contracts of the probationary teachers listed in the board packet.
Thank you. Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Arlen here.
Yep. Go ahead.
Just a question, do we have to do each one of these individually on a vote, or can we group them?
In the past, we've grouped them, but I did confirm with the School Board Association that we can have one resolution approving all the resolutions that are presented.
Wonderful, you just made my day because I didn't think we'd done it in the past. That'd be a long process. Thank you.
I would just like to thank everybody for teaching in Red Wing. We appreciate it, and we hope to see you back someday. So thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Start with Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Darius.
Aye.
Board Member Ostendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 5-0. Okay, thank you. Response to resolution of non-concurrence, Superintendent Anderson.
Yeah, as you hopefully know, the Native American Parent Committee did submit a resolution of non-concurrence with our educational program in terms of how it serves our Native American kids. That was done as per state law. We have 60 days to respond to that message, which means that we need to provide a resolution responding to that particular letter or resolution from the parent committee. And so at the last board meeting, we did talk about or authorized me to set up a subcommittee of the board in order to review that response. And so I was moving ahead with that, and then I realized that really if we're going to form an official committee of the board or a subcommittee of the board, we should really take that back to get formal approval of the committee, its purpose, the members, and who would serve as chair. And so I called time out, and that's why the recommendation is to approve what I included in the board packet. Now, at the same time, I had drafted a potential resolution that I did share with the parent committee and Arlen and Holly because, and Nikki, because I was hoping that they would serve on this subcommittee. And so I did share that with them. I've received some feedback, but I think to be consistent with what we had discussed earlier, I do think it would be best to approve the subcommittee that I recommended and then review the draft of the response to the letter and then take it back to the April 19th board meeting.
You're asking for approval of the ad hoc committee tonight, drafted just for our information for us.
Correct.
Board Member Tower, you're in the queue. Were you not? You're muted.
I wasn't in the queue.
Okay.
Somehow I don't know.
Board Member Derrick.
Thank you. I'm wondering on this, if we're establishing a conflict of interest with Nikki being chair of this ad hoc committee and being a member of the Native American Parent Committee. Just throwing that out. I don't have an answer for it. Certainly she represents the board as a board member, and she on the other end also. I guess it's up to the board to decide how they want to proceed with this.
Board Member Tip. Holly, you in there now? Board Member Tower, you back in? You're confusing me here. Go ahead.
I just want to say that I remember specifically Board Member Buck saying that she wears two hats. One is a parent, and that was her advocacy on that parent committee, and then one is a board member for us. So I have no personal problem with her wearing both hats. To be part of this, I think the more knowledge we have behind responding, the better off we're going to be.
Thank you. Board Member Tip.
I agree with what Holly said. I was just going to say that I think this is a good opportunity for us, having Nikki on the board and on the parent committee, that she can be kind of a guide to help us work together on both sides, because as Holly said, she does wear two hats, and we appreciate having her here with us. And so I think it's a great opportunity for us. As long as she is okay with it. I wish she were here to be able to speak to that.
Sounds like a motion to me.
Sure, I can make the motion. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution establishing an ad hoc committee to provide feedback about a response to a letter of non-concurrence as presented.
Thank you. Board Member Tip, is there a second?
Second.
Board Member Ostendorf beat you. Any further discussion? Board Member Ostendorf, you have a question? You're in the queue.
I was just going to say about the potential conflict. I think in this instance, because there's not a benefit per se to Board Member Buck or her family, like as a direct result, I don't think that is would be a conflict. I was just going to throw that 2 cents in there, that I'm usually pretty cautious around potential conflict issues. I don't think this one necessarily would be, but that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. All right, we'll start the vote with Board Member Derricks.
Yeah, now you put me on the spot. No.
Board Member Lawson.
Aye.
Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tip.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 4-1. Okay, thank you. Upcoming meetings and upcoming meetings and future topics. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 19th. We're in the hybrid portion. There might be some committees at 4:45 that day or 3:45 that I don't have in front of me. We're meeting here again at 6 o'clock on April 19th. And I'll just add here, been a good meeting. Thank you for letting me be the chair. Appreciate it. Beautiful day. So we're in unusual times here, I'll be honest. With COVID, declining enrollment, budget cuts, referendum promises, there's a lot on the table, a lot of moving parts. We'll get through it. We'll navigate our way through it all. Hopefully at the end of the day, we even have a better product than we did before COVID-19 hit. But time will tell. I know people are digging in, doing a lot of good things here for our students. And just want to let people know we're recognizing, we understand that. And it was a good day today. The kids that weren't in distance learning were all back in school today. And hopefully brighter and better things down the road for everybody. So with that, I'll entertain it to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Board Member Ossendorf, second by Tower. We'll start with Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tim.
Aye.
Board Member Derricks.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 7:36. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Great job, Jim.
Thank you.
And well said at the end, too.
Jennifer, I need your signature. Sure. And I need one other board member that
to attest Jennifer's signature.